people shinobi no kami here. In this fanfic Naruto trains a lot harder than the canon and strives to become the best. This story starts right after the Sasuke retrieval mission. Hope you enjoy this fanfic. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you want to suggest any other fanfics for me to read. Check the description for credits and support the creator of this story. So let us begin. Chapter 13. The Third Stage. It was the day of the third and final stage of the Chunin exams, and it seemed as if the entirety of Konoha had managed to get tickets. The stadium was filled to the brim with people from all over the elemental nations, many of who had come to see this generation's lineup of ninja. People from all stations in life, from daimyos to paupers, had come for what many were sure would be an exciting set of matches. Of course, it also helped that everyone finally got to see the newest and possibly one of the famous or infamous, depending on whom you asked, ninja. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was standing with the genin who had made it to the finals, in the center of the stadium where everyone could see them. He looked out at the crowd, and noticed that many of the people there were pointing to him as they spoke. The blonde shinobi was really beginning to rethink his position on whether or not being so well known was a good thing. When he had been younger he would have killed for this kind of attention. Now though, now I just want some peace and quiet. He shook himself out of his thoughts and looked up at the cage booth, to see the 4 cages who were in attendance this year being seated with their bodyguards. Tsunade looked out over the crowd that this year had turned up. It was exactly what she had expected the turnout to be this year. The blonde Hokage had sent several personal letters to daimyos and anybody who she deemed as important to let them know that she had a special attraction for them at the Chunin exams this year. Hokage Dono. Tsunade turned around to see Mai Terumi greeting her with a smile, walking up to her with her 2 bodyguards on either side. Mizukage Dono, Tsunade greeted as the woman took a seat on the blonde's left. You know, this is the first Chunin exam I've actually been to as a kage, Mai said as she looked down at the stadium, smiling as she saw Naruto. It's rather exciting. It is a rather interesting things to see from this perspective. The 2 women and their bodyguards turned to see Gaara and his 2 siblings walking up to them. I myself had the same feeling the first time I watched the Chunin exams as a kage. Kage Dono, it's a pleasure to see you again, Tsunade greeted. How was the trip here? Gaara took off his kage hat as he sat down on the left-hand side of Mai. It was fine, there was nothing very eventful that happened. Gaara turned to Mai. You are the new Mizukage, correct? He asked. I am, Mai said as she held out a hand, which Gaara accepted after a bit. I have heard many things about you from Naruto. Gaara cocked an eyebrow at the suffix. He absently wondered if the Mizukage and Naruto had a relationship outside of just what he did for her during the Civil War. When Naruto had visited Suna he had not mentioned being close to Kiri's new leader. Then again Gaara had gotten the feeling that there were a lot of things his blonde friend had not mentioned back then. He has spoken of me? Gaara inquired. Mai smiled. Quite often, he told me about the similarities you 2 have with your past. While Gaara's siblings were slightly shocked, the red-haired kage merely nodded in understanding. Looks like everyone else is already here. The 3 cages turned their head to the voice, to find A, B and Yugito walking up to them. It looks like this year has gained quite the crowd. I don't think I've seen so many people at one exam. We have gotten a pretty big turnout this year, Tsunade agreed as the Raikage took the seat on her right. Though it may be that some of the people here are really just coming to see one of Konoha's more infamous shinobi. The Raikage laughed. Yes, that would not surprise me, people always seem to have something of a fandom for certain powerful figures in the shinobi world. And I must admit few seem to fill that requirement as well as Naruto-san does. Kankuro leaned into Temari's ear as he whispered, it seems that Naruto has really gotten around. He could not believe that the little pipsqueak who had only worn orange and screamed, Dadbayo, at the top of his lungs was so famous. Not only famous but apparently had some kind of intimate relationship with the Mizukage, who in his humble opinion was a complete babe. I know what you mean, Temari whispered back, he seems to know just about every kage in the elementals. In fact the only one he does not seem to be friends with is the Tsuchikage, and that's just because Iwa hates his father. Yugito-chan, Mai greeted the younger woman with a smile, are you looking forward to seeing the kids Naruto trained in action? Yugito looked at the red-haired woman and offered her own smile. Despite their rocky start the 2 had ended up becoming friends. I am, knowing Naru-kun they should be able to put up quite the fight. As the two women talked, the other ninja in the booth looked at them, most wondering how the two knew each other. None of the other cages or their bodyguards besides Tsunade knew that Mei and Yugito had both been staying at the Namikaze estate. Tsunade had made Naruto tell her his relationship with all of the girls he planned on marrying. The only female she did not know he was dating was Konan. Even then Naruto had forced her to come to his estate before he told her anything, making sure that he told her in the most secure location he could think of so that the information was away from prying eyes. Most people would assume that the young man was being paranoid, but Tsunade knew that with all of the enemies he had in and outside of the village, paranoia was a good thing. Tsunade looked out at the crowd, specifically the daimyo's booth in an effort to make sure that all the dignitaries who had come for the exams were present. Nodding to herself, the blonde Hokage stood up from her seat and walked to the ledge. She raised her hands in a grandiose gesture as she began her speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome all of you to the Chunin exams. A roar of approval came up from the crowd. Tsunade waited for it to die down before she continued. This year we have 9 contestants who have proven their worth, showing skills beyond their status. Today you will get to see these talented young ninja in action. Let the Chunin exams begin. You seem quite good at riling up the crowd. Hokage Dono. Mei complimented as Tsunade returned to her seat. Mei herself had never been all that good at speeches, even short ones, at least not to the masses. She could do it, of course. No cage worth their weight would be unable to give a good rallying speech, but it had never been her forte. Thanks, I guess. I honestly hate speeches, Tsunade said, getting a trickle of laughter to run through the cage booth. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Before we begin this exam, there are a few new additions to this exam that I have added, Naruto said as the tournament started. First, we have the same rule as the one in the prelims. You listen to what I say, when I say it. Failure to do this will result in your immediate termination from the exams. Next, to make this exam a little more challenging and entertaining, I have placed several traps all throughout this arena. Many of the genin felt a sheen of sweat on their skin at seeing the sadistic leer on Naruto's face. There may be other surprises in store as well, problems that will arise and force you to think on your feet. I hope all of you have prepared well this past month. Now, Naruto began. Let's get to the first battle, Juka Karatake vs Hanabi Hyuga. Everyone else please leave the arena floor and go up to the fighter's booth. As the other 7 genin left the arena floor, Hanabi and Juka stayed, moving to opposite sides of the arena. Hanabi got into a classic Jukan stance and flared her Byakugan, making the veins around her temples bulge. Juka got into the standard Suna Academy stance. Neither spoke yet as they waited for the signal to start. Are both fighters ready? Naruto asked and received a nod from both of them. Bringing up his hand, Naruto made a downward slashing motion, then Hajime. The blonde shinobi jumped back as the battle started. You should give up, Hanabi stated in her emotionless voice, using her Hyuga face to maximize affect. You cannot win against me. Juka snorted. Less talk, more action, little girl. Hanabi glared at her opponent and rushed towards Juka, hoping to get in close so she could use her Jukan taijutsu style. As the Hyuga heiress ran, Juka began going through hand seals, stopping on the Tori bird seal as he called out his jutsu. Futon. Daitapa. Wind release. Great breakthrough. A large gust of wind hit Hanabi, attempting to lift her into the air. The young pale-eyed genin channeled chakra into the bottom of her feet, sticking to the ground as she let the gust pass her. When it did, she kicked off again. Closing the distance, she aimed a strike at one of the tenketsu on Juka's abdomen. However, the Suna genin jumped back, pulling out several kunai and wrapping exploding tags around them. He channeled some chakra into them and threw them at Hanabi. The Hyuga genin saw the kunai coming and began to spin. Hakusho Kaden. Heavenly divination rotation. A blue shield of chakra surrounded the Hyuga heiress, deflecting the kunai and making them bounce off her shield. However, that did not stop the notes from exploding. The blue energy sphere was blown back a ways, dissipating to reveal a slightly burnt Hanabi. Said girl shook the cobwebs out of her head and began another charge. Juka began going through more hand seals as he continuously backpedaled, only to trip a wire and force both Hanabi and he to dodge as several kunai and shuriken came flying at them. Before Hanabi could recover, Juka redid his hand seals and called out his jutsu. Futon. Repusho. Juka thrust out his hand with his palm facing out. A blast of wind shot from his hand and towards Hanabi. Being able to see the chakra, Hanabi dodged the wind attack and managed to close the distance. In that instant it was over as the Hyuga Kunoichi closed off Juka's Tenketsu points, knocking the Suna Genin unconscious. Winner by knockout, Hanabi Hyuga. Naruto announced. The crowd cheered for Hanabi as she left the arena floor. Several medics came out with a stretcher, placing Juka on it before heading to the medical wing. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Your genin is quite talented, Hokage-sama, Gaara said as the fight ended. Though she was quite reckless, Mei spoke up before Tsunade could say anything. Had it been a real battle and she charged a wind user with more powerful techniques, she would have died. Tsunade nodded. I have to agree with you, Mizukage Dono, and she has good techniques but needs to work on her strategy. Still, at least she's got spirit, the Raikage said. That's always a plus in my books. The other cages looked at him oddly for a moment, but nodded in agreement. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Next match, Konohamaru Sarutobi and Renji Ibari, could you two please come down to the arena floor? Naruto called out over the noise of the crowd. While Renji walked down the stairs, Konohamaru in his typical fashion jumped out of the fighter's box, using chakra to lessen the impact of his fall. Konohamaru moved to one side of the stadium while Renji took the other. Knowing he would need to use something other than a kunai for this battle, the young Sarutobi heir unsealed his bow staff, twirling it around before getting into his stance. In response to the younger genin bringing out his weapon, Renji unsheathed his sword and got into a standard kenjutsu stance. I hope you're ready for me to kick your ass. Konohamaru shouted in an enthusiastic and cocky voice. Renji's sweat dropped. This kid is like a miniature version of Ichigo with that attitude. Out loud he said, I think you're a little too cocky for your own good, kid. I'll enjoy taking you down a few pegs. Naruto looked at both fighters. Are you two ready? Receiving a nod he shouted, then. Hajime. The two shinobi rushed each other, clashing their respective weapons together in an attempt to hit the other. Renji came it with a diagonal slash that was blocked by Konohamaru, who used his staff's double-sidedness to counterattack. The Konoha Genin's staff managed to clip Renji's side, spinning with the blow. The Kiri shinobi spun around and aimed a slash at Konohamaru's midsection. Konohamaru parried the blow and began to spin his staff in increasingly complex maneuvers. Renji jumped back so as not to get hit. Timing his attack, Renji thrust his blade in the complex weaving of the bow staff, stopping it in its tracks. Renji pushed against the staff and tried to skewer Konohamaru, who leaned back and twisted his body out of the way, spinning his staff at the same time to knock Renji's sword off course and give the young Sarutobi an opening. Planting his staff in the ground, Konohamaru used it to increase the force of his kick as he smashed a foot into Renji's face. Renji went flying back but managed to flip in mid-air and land on his feet. Kaiten. Gokyako no Jutsu. The redhead looked up and cursed as a giant fire ball came barreling towards him. Renji put on a burst of speed as he jumped out of the way. Seeing Renji dodge, Konohamaru went through more hand seals and slammed them into the ground. Doden. Doryuden. Earth Release. Earth Dragon Missile. A dragon head rose out of the ground and began to fire powerful mud balls at Renji, forcing the Kiri Genin to dodge. Konohamaru pulled out several kunai and shuriken from his pouch, throwing them at Renji. Seeing the kunai coming, Renji used his sword to deflect the ones that came near him. The barrage stopped and the pineapple head tried to rush Konohamaru, with said genin doing the same. Neither saw the seals on the ground until it was almost too late. When they did, their eyes went wide and they were forced to carry Wimi as the ground under them exploded, sending fire and heat into the sky as well as tearing huge gouts in the field. They both appeared on opposite ends of the field. Looking at each other, they kicked off the ground and tried to move in close range, albeit much more cautiously than last time. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Well, this is turning out to be quite the fight. Said as he watched the two genin enter a close combat battle again. I have to admit to being impressed. They are getting pretty good, Mei said as she studied the battle, though they could think more tactically. Still, I think they might both be Chunin material, but we'll have to see more before deciding that, Tsunade said. Their combat level is definitely Chunin though. Yugito tilted her head. They have both been trained very well. Most Chunin don't actually learn all it means to be a Chunin until after they earn the rank anyway. The kitten is right yo, that means they gotta gain experience to know, be agreed as a tick mark formed on Yugito's head. Damn it B, shut up with your rapping. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto watched as the two genin went at it, their battle was impressive for genin. While it would not compare with say his battles with Akatsuki or Yagura, they were displaying quite a bit of skill. Naruto was glad he had taken to training Konohamaru for the month hiatus. Had he not received the blonde's harsh training, there would be no way the younger genin would be able to keep up with Renji. As it was the two were evenly matched, Renji was faster but Konohamaru could use both sides of his weapon, negating Renji's advantage. Renji came at Konohamaru with a slash. Leaning back Konohamaru let the blow pass over him and attached an exploding tag to the flat side the Kiri genin's blade. He jumped away just as the tag exploded. Konohamaru was breathing heavily as he waited for the smoke to clear. When it did he saw that Renji was on the ground, his sword several feet away. Konohamaru gave Renji no time to recover as he made a single kage bushin and held out his hand. The clone came up and began to help Konohamaru with the manipulation for his jutsu. Soon enough a familiar spinning ball of chakra formed in the palm of the young genin's hand. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX, Naruto taught him the Rasengan. Tsunade shouted as she stood up from her seat. As she stared at the infamous ball of chakra she could feel several different emotions running through her. The first was pride at the fact that Naruto could teach someone an A-rank technique within a month, as well as the fact that Konohamaru was able to learn such a powerful jutsu. And anger at the fact that Naruto taught such a powerful technique to a genin. She would be having a word with the blonde when this was over. I suspected Naruto would do something like this, Mei said as Tsunade sat back down. I have to admit I am impressed that a genin was able to learn such a powerful technique within a month. It does speak well of the boy's skills, the Raikage said, as well as that of the teacher. However, the fact that he is using such a technique when he doesn't need it also shows he needs more restraint, Yugito interrupted. Right now the boy is just showing off. The others in the booth nodded in agreement. XXXXXXXXXXX Konohamaru ran right at the red-haired Kiri shinobi, smashing the Rasengan right into Renji's stomach. The red head was thrown back from the power of the technique and hit the ground. When Renji did not get back up, Naruto nodded to himself as he announced the winner. Winner by knockout is Konohamaru Sarutobi. Alright. Yes. Konohamaru jumped up and down in the air as the crowd cheered for him. Meanwhile Renji was placed on a stretcher and taken to the medical wing. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. These matches are quite entertaining, the Raikage said as the others turned to him. Watching all of these battles makes me wish I was down there fighting right now. It was quite impressive, though Konohamaru needs to learn when to use such powerful techniques, Tsunade said. Still they both showed a decent amount of skill. Your ninja is quite impressive with a sword, the busty blonde turned to Mei. Thank you Hokage Dono, Mei said in gratitude, he is one of the people I am hoping will revive the Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananan Shu. Well he is pretty talented, Yugito said, with some more time, training and experience that goal is quite possible. Who is his trainer? Raiga Korisuke, Mei answered, surprising the other three cages and their bodyguards. I thought Raiga became a missing ninja several years ago. Tsunade questioned the busty redhead. He did, Mei answered, Naruto fought him about a year ago. Rather than kill him he brought Raiga to me. I had offered the man a position in the village again, he accepted on a few conditions and had a hand in training the people I am trying to make into the new swordsman. Mei shivered a bit when she had mentioned his conditions, aside from keeping Rinmaro with him at all times, the man had demanded that he be allowed to give his enemies funerals. She had been tempted to just kill him after that, but with her village in desperate need of powerful shinobi she had not been able to afford to do that. The others noticed her shiver but ignored it as they went back to the battles, though a few of the people there continued to wonder how close she was to Naruto to use a nickname like that. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX, will Raiden and Ichigo Kurosaki come down? Naruto called out the next names to battle. Ichigo appeared a little ways away, his sword out at the ready. Raiden walked out of the entrance, moving to the opposite side of the orange-haired genin. Ichigo grinned as he got into a wide two-handed stance, his sword in front of him running parallel to the ground. Raiden in turn got into a taijutsu stance, presenting his profile view with his left foot in front and his right behind him, ready to push the balls of his feet. I hope you're ready to lose, Ichigo replied in his typical cocksure tone, a smirk on his face. I believe you should wait until after the battle is finished to gloat, Raiden replied, lest you end up eating your words. Are both fighters ready? Naruto asked. He received a nod from Raiden. You bet I am. Ichigo said as he grinned, let's do this. Naruto nodded, then Hajime. Ichigo disappeared in a burst of speed, reappearing right next to Raiden swinging his sword. Raiden ducked under the sword and came up after it passed over his head, aiming a punch at Ichigo who jumped back. Raiden went through several hand seals, slamming his hands on the ground. He called out his jutsu. Raiden. Ikazuchi Hakai. A large bolt of lightning tore through the landscape, heading towards Ichigo who jumped into the air to avoid it. Raiden jumped in the air to meet him, taking out a kunai and piercing him through the stomach. Only for Ichigo to burst into water. A large blue and ethereal-looking wave came barreling up from the ground. Raiden used a kariwimi to escape the attack. Appearing near a tree on the other side of the arena, he tried to think up a plan but had no time as a sizzling noise reached his ear. Turning his head, he cursed to find several exploding tags. He jumped out of the tree just as it exploded. As he landed on the ground, Ichigo appeared right in front of him. Raiden ducked under the swing sent his way, getting down on his hands and pushing out with a kick. Ichigo used the flat end of his blade to block, skidding back from the force. He looked up to see Raiden going through more hand signs. Raiden. Raikyu. A ball of lightning the size of a cannonball shot out of Raiden's mouth. In return, Ichigo channeled some chakra into his sword. As soon as the lightning ball came close enough to him, the orange-haired shinobi sliced it in half. A blade of blue chakra was launched from the end of Ichigo's sword and flew towards Raiden. The Kumo shinobi was forced to jump out of the way. However, Ichigo appeared right next to him and the young man was not fast enough to dodge the kick to his face. Raiden flew back and into the air from the kick, flipping around so he landed on his feet. He grabbed his bleeding nose and set it back in place with a crunch, looking up to see that Ichigo was gone. He looked around only for instincts to kick in and make him roll to the left. A good thing he had too. As soon as he did, a large blue blade on chakra slashed into the spot he had been standing on, destroying the area and leaving a crater. The young man stared at the spot he had previously been, giving Ichigo the distraction needed to come in behind Raiden and smash the butt end of his sword into the back of the Kumo Genin's neck. As Raiden crumbled to the ground, Naruto announced the winner. Winner by knockout is Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo raised his hand as the crowd cheered, walking back into the entrance to the fighter's booth. Meanwhile, a medic team had placed Raiden on a stretcher, standing up to take him to the medical ward. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. I have to admit that boy is impressive to defeat Raiden, Ace said as the fight ended. He is one of my better genin. Well, Ichigo has a lot of raw power to throw around, Mei replied. To be honest, were it not for that, I doubt he would have won. The boy lacks finesse. That reminds me of how Naruto used to be, Tsunade said, remembering how the blonde had been before his training trip. Mei looked over at the busty blonde woman with a smirk. Oh. Do tell. Tsunade gave her own smirk as she began to tell stories of how the young blonde used to be before his training, much to the amusement of the others in the box. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine. I get the feeling someone's talking about me and it's not in a good way. He shook his head of the thought before focusing on the task at hand. Will Udon and Otame Shinji please come to the arena floor? Naruto called out, resisting the urge to sigh. At first, being a proctor actually sounded kind of fun, but now it was just boring. All I'm doing is saying the same thing over again, the blonde teen thought as he watched Udon and Otame come down and stand on opposite sides of the arena. Are both fighters ready? Naruto asked as he looked at the two. He received a nod from each and decided to get this started, then Hajime. The two genin instantly jumped away from each other, Udon going through hand signs while Otame threw several shuriken enhanced with his wind chakra. As the kunai came in, Udon spread his hands in front of him in what looked like a defensive gesture. Raiden. Maganekiku Gyukuden. Lightning release. Magnetic reversal. The air around Udon became saturated with static electricity. It was unnoticeable to all except those with Dujutsu and those who could sense lightning chakra. When the kunai came into the field, they stopped instantaneously. turned around and headed right back to a surprised Otame. Said Suna Genin was able to only just get out of the way, though it was not without injury as the 2 slashes that now ran across his left arm indicated. XXXXXXXXXXXX. It looks like you've got a Raiden user, said as he looked at the boy with the bowl cut and glasses. And the technique, simple but extremely effective. I take it that Naruto-san has been teaching him as well. Yes, Tsunade said as she looked over at the Raikage, how did you know? The Raikage laughed, it's quite simply really, he used that same jutsu on me during our first spar. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Udon did not give Otame any time to react to the unexpected attack from his own weapons. Charging straight at the Suna Genin, Udon pulled several kunai from his pouch and tossed them at Otame. The older Genin made to dodge, jumping up and to the left. In response, Udon manipulated his fingers, which had chakra strings attaching them to the kunai, and changed their direction back towards Otame. The Suna Genin was impaled through the arms and legs. Seconds later he burst into smoke before a log appeared in the man's place. Fudden. Kaisderite. Wind release. Wind cutter. A fierce wind with several large wind blades smashed into Udon. At least it smashed into where Udon was as the Genin soon disappeared in a puff of smoke, a log replacing where he had been. Otame jumped out from the tree he had been hiding in, looking around to see if he could spot Udon. His eyes widened a bit as he rolled to the left when Udon appeared right next to him, aiming a slash for the Suna Genin's neck. Otame pushed himself up onto his feet as he turned to face Udon, going through several hand seals. Fudden. Repusho. A gust of wind hit Udon before he could react, sending him flying towards a tree. He was able to flip himself around and land on the trunk, however he froze as a seal appeared under him, paralyzing him for several precious seconds. Seconds which Otame used to chuck several shuriken at the now frozen Konoha Genin. Thankfully the seal disrupted in time for Udon to do a quick Kariwimi. Appearing on a tree several meters away. Reaching into his kunai pouch, Udon pulled out several shuriken and flung them at Otame. Said Suna Genin turned around just in time to see them and began going through several hand seals. Fudden. Datapa. A gust of wind knocked the shuriken off course, but the distraction was all Udon needed to get close. Sending punch to Otame's chest, it was swatted away by the Genin's other hand but had served its purpose. When Udon jumped away, Otame looked down and felt his eyes widen as he saw the exploding tag on his shirt, the slight sizzle showing the tag was active. The sizzle ended and the tag exploded, however Otame was able to rip his shirt off in time, revealing his white undershirt. Frowning, Udon threw several kunai at him. Otame saw this and used a kawirimi, appearing behind a tree. He sighed as he tried to come up with a plan. Looking out from behind the tree, he frowned when he saw Udon was no longer there. That was when everything went black as he felt the butt end of a kunai smash into the back of his neck. Naruto saw Udon come out from behind a tree, dragging an unconscious Otame. Otame is unable to continue the battle, therefore the winner is Udon. Naruto announced. As Udon made his way to the stand and Otame was taken out by a medical team, Naruto called the next match. Will Rukia Kuchiki and Anui Tetano please come down to the arena floor? The two genin walked down to the floor and stood on opposite sides of each other. Rukia had a hand on the hilt of her blade, but had not unsheathed it as she took a Baitujutsu stance. Anui meanwhile had taken out two serrated kunai, with small traces of lightning coming out of the blades. Are both fighters ready? Asked Naruto, receiving a sharp nod from both of them, then. Hajime. Once the word Hajime left Naruto's mouth, Rukia disappeared in a burst of speed. Reappearing right in front of Anui, Rukia's sword came out and attempted to bisect the genin. However, Anui had been able to see her movement and blocked the attack with his kunai. Rukia was forced to jump back as a lightning coursed from Anui's blades and through hers. Rukia shook her head to clear it after receiving the shock, however Anui was not going to let her get any rest as he came after her. Rukia was forced to duck dodge and weave her way around the two kunai, knowing that she would be in serious trouble if she got hit by those. Knowing that she could not use her sword in this instance, Rukia jumped back and went through a series of one-handed seals. Sweden. Tepidama. Several cannon-sized globs of water shot from the Kiri Kunoichi's mouth, forcing Anui to jump back and dodge as the water balls smashed into the ground. Doing so left the young man open to attack. Appearing in front of the boy, Rukia managed to kick the kunai out of the Kumo Genin's hands. Unfortunately for her, Anui did not need kunai to channel lightning chakra. He grabbed onto Rukia's extended leg, channeling lightning through his hands and into the leg. Rukia let out a muffled scream of pain as she bit her lip. Anui began to spin around, using his and Rukia's combined weight to fling her into the air. He began to go through several hand seals. Raiden. Bakufu. Lightning release. Blast. A bolt of lightning shot out of Anui's extended hand. The lightning hit the still airborne Rukia, sending electricity coursing through the Kiri Genin's body. Only for said body to turn into water. Ninpu. Kurigakur no Jutsu. Ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu. A thick mist began to spread out around the arena. Since there was not a very large water source nearby, it was only enough to hamper visibility rather than render everything invisible. Anui went on guard as he peered through the mist. It was not enough that he could not see through it, however it would certainly affect his vision and skew it enough that it could prove costly. That was when his instincts started screaming at him to move. He followed them just as Rukia dropped from the sky, slashing at where he had been. Thus began the game of cat and mouse as Rukia would appear and try to take Anui out, and then disappear 1 second later. Worse, because the Genin's vision was skewered by the mist, he could not accurately predict how close Rukia actually was. It often looked like she was farther away than she really was. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. This is turning out to be quite the exciting battle, the Raikage said as he tried to peer into the mist. Your Genin is good. To be able to fight so well despite being handicapped by facing against someone with an opposing affinity. Thank you Raikage Dono, Mei replied. To be honest, she is one of my better strategists among the Genin, it was why I placed her on this team. She paused and thought for a moment, that and she's the only one her other 2 teammates are actually afraid of among the Genin. So she keeps them in line, Yugito said with a smirk. Mei grinned, of course, you know how men are. The women in the booth smirked at that comment, all of them knowing of the trouble men cause and how much of a handful they can be. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Anui dodged another attack from Rukia as he tried to come up with a plan. He knew of a jutsu he could use, but it required more chakra than he had. As he dodged a slash that came at him from the right, he reached his hand into his pouch and pulled out 2 soldier pills. This would leave him exhausted afterwards, but he felt it would be his best chance to win. Swallowing them, he felt a burst of chakra and began going through several hand seals. Raiden. Raiko Nami. Lightning release. Lightning wave. Lightning burst from Otame's body as he spread his arms wide, sending what looked like a wave of lightning in all directions. There was a shout of pain from somewhere within the mist as it began to clear. Otame dropped onto his knees with his breathing heavy. When the mist cleared, it showed Rukia on her knees with electricity sparking off of her, though she was still conscious. Omate grunted as he stood up and made his way over to the black-haired girl. When he got next to her, he put a kunai to her neck. Only for his eyes to widen in shock as Rukia turned into a puddle of water. He had no time to react as a blade touched his throat. Surrender, Rukia commanded. Anui sighed as he realized he had no chakra left to get out of this. I surrender. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. That girl is quite impressive, Tsunade said. She has excellent strategies. Thank you, I taught her about tactical combat myself, Mei replied with pride in her voice. I have to admit your Genin has amazing talent, said. While Anui was not his most powerful shinobi, he was decent and the Kiri Genin had a disadvantage in element. Thank you Raikage Dono, Mei replied. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Winner by forfeit is Rukia Kuchiki. Naruto shouted out to the crowd. As the crowd cheered, the 2 Genin left. Naruto sighed as the first half of the Chunin exam finals was over. He looked up at the stadium as he began to speak again. The first half of the Chunin exams are now over. We will be having a short 15-minute break for all guests to grab a bite and stretch their legs before moving on to the second round. As the spectators began to rise from their seats, Naruto turned his attention to the cage booth. Grinning, he disappeared in a gentle breeze. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Tsunade along with the other cages stood up in their chairs to stretch legs a bit, letting themselves get some of the feeling back. Despite being forced to sit at a chair all day due to their jobs, none of them actually got used to it, and the chairs they were in now were less comfortable than their cage chairs. Those were some exciting matches, the Raikage said with a grin. I can't wait to see the rest. Tsunade chuckled. Yes, they were pretty good. We'll have to discuss who among them deserves to be Chunin since there are many potential candidates. There are a few who can make it to Chunin, May agreed, but I think it would be wise for us to wait until we see what else they are capable of, especially since the battles will get harder the more they fight, forcing them to think with a level head. You're pretty smart, yo. A pretty little thing like you knows how things go. Kurabi said in his rap. This time he was not just smacked by Yugito, but also by May, who was looking at B with a creepy smile that spoke of him feeling immense pain if he said the wrong thing. B, stop rapping. Yugito growled. Especially about me. In that context, do so again and I'll melt you, May replied in that sweet and creepy voice. The men around her shivered at the tone, though Ao was glad that for once it was not directed at him. B actually paled at the threat. Having Yugito kick him was fine, he would usually be up right after since they only hurt when she was really pissed. But having a cage say she was going to melt you, and knowing that she actually had the capability to do it with her Yoden Jutsu was an entirely different kettle of fish. Thankfully, before he could say anything that would likely get him melted, a voice spoke up behind them. Now that isn't nice, Mei-chan. Everyone turned to see Naruto looking at them with a grin. I don't even think he can help his rapping. Though. Naruto looked at B and the man felt a small shiver run through him. I would suggest that you not make any crude comments about her. Naru-koi-kun. Yugito and Mei greeted the blonde as they walked up to him. Naruto gave the two a smile as he pulled the two into an embrace, letting one of them each rest their head on his shoulder as they returned his hug. As this happened, everyone who did not know about his relationship with two women, meaning everyone except Tsunade, was looking at Naruto in shock. Well, the men were looking on in a mixture of shock and envy. Kankuro was even muttering about lucky blonde bastards, and Gaara's face actually looked to be the same color as his hair. Temari, however, was glaring at the two girls. Sure, she did not know Naruto that well, and when they first met she thought he was a brat, but even she could not help but feel jealous seeing those two girls with him now. Naruto chuckled as he wrapped his own arms around Mei and Yugito. How are you two doing up here? Not too boring, I hope. Not at all. Mei grinned as she lifted her head up and gave him a rather heated kiss, one that caused Kankuro to get a slight nosebleed from just watching. Breaking the kiss, she leaned her head back on his shoulder. The blonde shinobi barely had any time to react after Mei's rather passionate lip lock as Yugito claimed his lips next, moaning a bit as she sucked on his bottom lip. Pulling back, she gave Naruto her own smile. But it's much better now that you're here, the blonde woman finished for Mei as she too put her head back on Naruto's shoulder. That was something the two had started doing recently. Whenever one of them would speak, the other would finish it. Every time they did that, it sent pleasurable shivers down the blonde shinobi's spine. Naruto was sure that the two were doing it on purpose. He suspected that it was Mei's idea. Yugito, while she had her moments, she was never one to as outgoing or experimental as the red-haired Cage. That and they have been hanging out together after that restaurant incident when I've been training Konohamaru, Moegi and Udon. Naruto gave a soft chuckle that the girls felt as a slight rumble in his chest. You know, you two are becoming insatiable, you know that. Only 'cause you spoiled us this week, Mei replied as she looked at him with a grin. I suppose so, Naruto said with a small smirk. I'm going to have to be careful around you girls. As the three continued their banter, the others looked at the pair in shock. Kankuro leaned over into his brother's ear and whispered, did you know Naruto was getting play like this from two hot women? Gaara shook his head. No. I wonder how he does it. Kankuro blinked for a moment as the words registered in his ear. When they did, he turned around and looked at his little brother in shock. Is Gaara actually thinking about girls? Kankuro wondered to himself. Gaara had become quite popular with the ladies of Suna, though Kankuro knew it was unintentional since his little brother knew nothing about women. To hear his little brother ask something like that was shocking. Yo, big bro, what's going on with those three, do you know? Killer B asked as he tried to turn away from the sight of the three, yet somehow found himself staring. A just shook his head, unable to come up with an answer as he too stared at the trio. It is too bad Jiraiya-sama is not here. I'm sure this would be great material to help him write his books. It was several minutes later when Naruto was forced to go back down to the arena floor, much to the girls' protest. However, he promised to make it up to them later, giving them a knowing look before leaving for the arena again. XXXXXXXXXXXX. You know I don't think I'll ever get tired of your cooking Narukoi, Mei said as she took another bite of the food Naruto had prepared, moaning in delight as the food melted on her taste buds. On the other side of him Yugito was nodding her head in agreement as she ate her food. It had only been a few hours since the Chunin exams ended. Each stage had gotten harder from the next, with Naruto occasionally making Kage Bushin, forcing the genin to team up with each other, to creating storms with his unparalleled control of the elements. The final contestants had actually fought in a three-way battle. Akira, Ichigo and Konohamaru had been the three to make it into the final round, with the big surprise winner being Akira. Though maybe Naruto should have not been so surprised by the outcome, the Kumo Kunoichi had played it smart, merely let Ichigo and Konohamaru beat the crap out of each other, and when they had been sufficiently weakened she had knocked the two out. Out of the 9 genin who had participated in the exams, only Rukia, Akira and Udon had made it to Chunin. Some of the others had the skills of a Chunin, but did not know when to make a tactical withdrawal, the best 2 examples of this being Ichigo and Konohamaru. Still that only seemed to get the two even more determined to do better next time. Of course the two also vowed to defeat the other, having formed a rivalry during their three-way battle royal. I'm glad to hear that, Naruto replied as he took a bite of the food he had made for himself. Swallowing his bite before speaking again, I would be awfully disappointed if my food was no longer satisfactory to you. Currently he, Yugito and Mei were in the small paradisiacal lake Naruto and Mei had gone swimming in 2 weeks prior, having a picnic. The three were sitting under one of the many trees, a blanket was laid out under them and there was an assortment of food on top of it. It was their last night together, the two women would be leaving now that the exams were over, and so Naruto had made them all a large dinner. Yugito grinned as she swallowed another piece of sushi. She had to admit, while Naruto's food was not as good as the sushi she got at Kenshi's, it was still quite delicious. Then it's a good thing you don't have to worry about that, though even if your food wasn't good, I'm sure we'd still love you. You know that sentence doesn't inspire that much confidence, Naruto said with a mock pout on his face. You make it sound like you might not feel the same way if my cooking was not as good as it was. Mei gave the blonde shinobi a teasing grin. Well, I didn't want to say anything, but for the rest of their time there the three talked and teased each other. Naruto gave an internal smile as the two women spoke like they had been good friends for years. He was glad they were no longer fighting. When everyone had had their fill of the food, Naruto resealed the picnic basket and blanket in a scroll. Standing up he grinned at the two before taking off his shirt and throwing it at the two women. So do you girls want to go for a swim? His answer came in the form of Mei and Yugito throwing their own clothes at his head, right before they tackled him into the lake. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Sitting at her desk in the Hokage Tower, Tsunade was finishing up her report on the Chunin exams and the paperwork for Udon's promotion. She looked up at the clock and sighed as she realized how late it was, and I still have to do the regular paperwork after this, Tsunade groaned. What she wouldn't give for a cup or bottle of sake, or 10. Unfortunately Shizune had come in once again and gotten rid of her secret stash, again. Sighing in annoyance she worked harder to finish the paperwork so she could go home and get a drink. As she continued working a knock sounded at her door. Come in, she called without looking up. The door opened and 3 people walked in and stood in front of her desk. Tsunade-sama, a voice she recognized instantly sounded. Tsunade's eye twitched as she looked up to see Danzo Shimura, Homura and Kaharu, 3 people she did not want to see. What do you 3 want? Tsunade asked without bothering to do any of the customary greetings. In case you haven't noticed, I have a lot of work to do. The 3 elders frowned at her disrespectful voice, but knowing what they came here for decided to let it go. Danzo stepped forward to speak. We are merely here as concerned citizens, Tsunade-sama. Oh. Tsunade asked, stopping her work as she looked at the 3 with a raised eyebrow. And what is there that could concern you 3? Homura coughed into his hand as he spoke. We have been hearing many rumors about this Akatsuki that Jiraiya-sama has been spying on. We are concerned about the effects this could have on Konoha, especially when they come after Namikaze-san. Tsunade narrowed her eyes as she figured where this was going. She knew that the 3 would not leave their issue with Naruto alone. The only question was what were they planning? And why would you be concerned about Namikaze-san? You do know that he is an S-rank ninja, yes? One whom I am sure may even be more powerful than me. We know very well how powerful Namikaze-san is, Kaharu retorted, however we feel it would be beneficial to give him some added protection. After all, with all the enemies he has now, leaving him without adequate protection would be foolhardy. So that's what they want, Tsunade thought as she now understood what they were after. They wanted to have one of Danzo's men to keep an eye on Naruto, someone who could find some kind of weakness they could exploit to bend him to their will. To be honest, she was surprised they were being so transparent. Normally she would have to look under what they were saying to find out what they really wanted. Though perhaps that could be accredited to the fact that they were getting desperate. Naruto had outplayed them in every game they had so far, they knew they were running out of options. And you think you have someone who is strong enough to protect Naruto? Tsunade asked incredulously, stalling for time. I don't know of any shinobi besides myself and Jiraiya who are able to fight S-rank ninja in combat, unless there is something you three are not telling me. To their credit, the three did not show any outward reaction to her threat. I can have one of my best security personnel accompany him on missions, Danzo said. They knew he had to be careful with this. Tsunade knew that Danzo's route operation was not disbanded as it was supposed to be. Tsunade's lips became a thin line as she listened to the man. She knew what his security personnel really was. The blonde knew he was actually referring to his supposed disbanded route Anbu division. However, she also knew she could not prove it. Danzo was easily the most paranoid man she had ever met. He had covered his tracks so well that not even Jiraiya's spy network had been able to get more than a small glimmer of information. It was part of the reason neither she nor Sarutobi before her were ever able to try Danzo for treason. As she was thinking of what to do with their request, another thought came to her. Danzo wanted one of his route members to keep an eye on Naruto, however it could easily be used to get the reversed effect. If she could have Naruto get close to one of his men, they would be able to spy and possibly locate Danzo's base of operations. At the very least they could gain some useful information. From what Jiraiya had told her, Naruto was an expert in information gathering, stealth and espionage. Aside from that, the young man also had the uncanny ability to make friends out of people, even enemies, something that could and had proven useful on many occasions. That decided, Tsunade put on her poker face as she spoke. I suppose what you say has some merit. Very well, I will allow one of Danzo's personal security guards onto a team with Naruto. Though he may not always be teamed up with him, he will go on any missions of importance. While Homura and Kaharu were nodding their heads in a pleased fashion, Danzo narrowed his eyes at the woman. She had relented far easier than he had expected. The old war hawk was not naive enough to believe that Tsunade would just let one of his men on Naruto's squad just like that. While Tsunade could not prove it, Danzo knew that she knew of his route Anbu. This led him to wonder what she was planning. He shook the thought off. Even if she had some kind plan, it won't matter in the end. He would still get what he wants. I'm glad to see we came to an agreement, Hokage-sama, Danzo said. I will have my chosen man here tomorrow morning. Tsunade nodded. Very well. As the three elders left her room, Tsunade turned her chair to look out at the village. She was taking a risk by allowing one of Danzo's men to get close to Naruto, someone who could potentially harm or even assassinate the Uzumaki Namikaze heir. However, she had faith in the blonde's abilities to get through most situations, and she knew that Danzo would not be bold enough to try that. Not yet, at least. She could only hope that this would work out in the end. Turning back to her desk, Tsunade picked up the first sheet on the stack of paperwork. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto let out a soft grunt as he rolled himself over Yugito, now lying down in the center of the bed. Mei rolled over as she wrapped one arm around his chest, throwing her leg over him and pulling herself close enough that Naruto could feel her still hardened nipples as they rubbed against him. On his other side, a tired and sweaty Yugito did the same thing, lightly purring as she nuzzled into his neck. Naruto smiled as he wrapped an arm around their waists, pulling them flushed up against him so that there was no room in between their bodies. Both girls let out a low moan and then a sigh of content as Naruto began to rub his hands up and down their backs. I'm gonna miss this feeling, Yugito murmured as Naruto's natural warmth began to lull her to sleep. Mei did not say anything, merely hummed in agreement, already falling prey to the natural warmth the blonde shinobi emitted, her stamina nowhere near Yugito's due to her not being a Jinchuriki. Naruto kissed both Yugito and Mei on the forehead, so will I, but it's not like we won't see each other. I know, Yugito sighed as she kissed Naruto's shoulder, doesn't mean I'm not gonna miss getting spoiled. Naruto let out a soft chuckle, don't worry, eventually I'll be able to spoil you girls like this every day. Naruto kissed her head again, now let's follow Mei's example and get some rest. Yugito smiled as she did as asked, letting sleep take her. XXXXXXXXXXXXX, you called Danzo-sama. Danzo looked at the figure kneeling before him, a young man who was wearing a bird mask that could not be any older than 17. Yet he was also one of Danzo's most valuable assets, having been trained at an early age when the War Hawk was unable to get Naruto into his root program. I have a new mission for you, Danzo said without preamble, you are to watch Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Find out everything you can about him, strengths, weaknesses and any people he is close to. Do you understand your mission? Hi Danzo-sama, the young boy spoke in an emotionless tone. Good, take off your mask, you will not need it for this mission, Danzo ordered. The young man took off his mask revealing coal-black eyes, black hair and pale skin. Still kneeling, the youth set the mask on the floor, keeping his head bowed down for his leader. Danzo gave a small smile to himself, this boy would complete his mission, the bandaged man had made sure of that. For this mission your name will be Sai. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto looked into his bowl of steaming ramen with a sigh, twirling the noodles on his chopsticks he brought it to his mouth and began eating. It had only been a day since Mei and Yugito left and he was already missing the two women. He had gotten used to waking up with the two next to him and spending the time he was not using to train himself or others with them. Shaking his head he finished eating his ramen, drinking the broth straight from the bowl before unsealing his frog wallet and taking out the necessary money where he put it on the table. Thanks for the food Chuki-san. Naruto called out to the ramen chef who was in the back. Give my regards to Ayame-ne-chan when she gets here. Alright. See you later Naruto. Chuki called as his head popped out from the back. Naruto tossed a wave over his shoulder as he lifted the flaps on the restaurant and left. The blonde shinobi waved to several people as he walked by, recognizing them as the ones who respected him for his burden. As he made his way home Naruto spotted Choji, Shikamaru and Ino walking out of a shinobi store. Changing direction the blonde made his way over to them. Hey guys, Naruto greeted as he stopped next to them. What's up Naruto? Choji asked as he hefted his new halberd on his shoulder. Not much, Naruto replied, now that the Chunin exams are over things have gotten pretty quiet. Yeah, it's also been a lot less troublesome now, Shikamaru said. Personally he was glad those troublesome exams were over with. Now he could get back to his cloud watching. Everything is always troublesome for you Shikamaru, Ino scolded him. Nah, just anything that actually requires me to work, the lazy Jonin replied. Ino scowled before turning her attention to Naruto. So what's this I've been hearing about you spending time with two foreign women? Being a gossip queen, Ino was quite curious to learn more about this. It had been the talk of nearly every girl in Konoha, first claiming that Naruto had been seen with a red-haired woman with rumors of it being the new Mizukage. Then there was the rumor of him spending time with a blonde woman, Akumo Kunoichi at that, which then turned into him spending time with the two of them. Ino had been able to confirm those rumors when she had seen Naruto with the two women in question on his arm during the breaks in the Chunin exams, but wanted more information. She also would not deny to being jealous. Ino had tried multiple times to flirt with Naruto. After the young blonde's first council meeting as a clan head, her father Inoichi had let slip that Naruto had been placed under the CRA and would have to take multiple wives. As clan heir it was necessary that Ino know about clan laws, so she knew about this almost as soon as Naruto's heritage had been revealed, but having her dad confirm it made her that much more determined to make the blonde shinobi hers. It hadn't worked out the way she had wanted. Naruto, while not being rude, had either turned down or redirected any attempts at her asking him for a date or any time she had tried to flirt with him. It had been a vexing experience for the blonde Kunoichi who was used to using her beauty on men in the village to get what she wanted. She had eventually stopped trying to get him and instead just focused on being his friend, though that did not mean that she did not feel jealousy towards those who had. Naruto blinked at the question before shrugging. He had known the moment those two appeared on his doorstep that word would get out. and with Ino being such a gossip her need to know would be insatiable. The red-haired woman was Mei Terumi, the Godime Mizukage. And the blonde was Yugito ni, Akumo Kunoichi and the Jinchuriki for the Nibi no Nekomata. The three with him gaped at him when they heard of the blonde's status. They knew that Naruto was a Jinchuriki, and in all honesty didn't care, but hearing about another one was always a surprise. They also happen to be two of the four women I plan on marrying, Naruto said. There was no way to hide that now that the three had been seen together. Not that there was much of a point anyway. Yugito was already a target for Akatsuki, so the information about her being his fiancé would not really mean much. And since she lived in Kumo, Danzo and his cohorts would be unable to make a move on her. And Mei was a Kage, meaning not only was she an S-rank ninja, but she also commanded several thousand other ninja. Akatsuki and Danzo would have to stupid to attempt trying to get her as a hostage. So you mean that you're marrying them? Ino asked in surprise. Hunches were all well and good, but hearing the rumors straight from the horse's mouth so to speak was another thing entirely. Didn't I just say that? Naruto asked rhetorically. Seriously, why do some women like to repeat what he already said? Maybe Shikamaru had a point, some women were troublesome. Well, it's just surprising is all. Ino said in her defense. I suppose that's true, Naruto said. He had refused to give any information about who he planned on marrying, feeling that it was not only nobody's business but his and the women he was marrying. However, I've known them for several years now. One of them is a Kage and the other, Jinchuriki like yourself, Shikamaru muttered. Sounds like some kind of troublesome political arrangement. Naruto laughed at him. I suppose it would. To be honest, I never thought about it like that. I met both of them during my days traveling the elemental nations. He smiled a bit as his eyes glazed over in remembrance. Both of them had something that I not only love, but was unique and distinctive to just them, aside from the fact that they have unrivaled beauty even among other kunoichi. I'm not one to believe in destiny or fate or any of that bullshit, but I really do have to thank Kami for bringing me to them. The three ninja looked at the blonde who looked like one of those love-struck kids in some kind of drama show that Shikamaru's mom loved to watch. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Yoshino Nara sneezed as she watched her favorite soap opera. Someone's talking about me, she mumbled as she grabbed a tissue. If it's anything bad they are going to get a beating from my frying pan. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Ino once again felt jealousy well up inside of her. It was clear as day that Naruto was utterly devoted to those two. When she had been chasing after Sasuke, and to a lesser extent and much more recently, Naruto, she had hoped to see that look aimed at her. She sighed in disappointment. Naruto shrugged as he snapped himself out of his trance-like state. Though it will definitely help village relations with both Kumo and Kiri, still it's really only convenient and not something that matters. It still sounds troublesome, Shikamaru said. Naruto just rolled his eyes at the lazy Nara. The four continued talking for a while, switching the subject to a topic that did not involve the blonde's personal life when Naruto sensed movement behind him. Spinning around he unsealed Susanoo and sent a wind blade into two black tigers. Both of them fell apart as the blade passed through them and Naruto frowned when a smell hit his nose. Those things are made of ink. Looking around, Naruto spotted a figure on one of the roofs several meters away. Channeling chakra into his eyes, Naruto was able to get a good look at the figure. It was a boy around his age with short ink black hair, black eyes and very pale skin. He had a small backpack on him that Naruto assumed held the equipment he used to make those two ink beasts. He wore a short black jacket and also carried a tanto on his back under the pack. The rest of his outfit consisted of a high-collared shirt that exposed his midriff, black pants, shinobi sandals and gloves with his index finger and thumb exposed. In many ways the teen bore a strong physical resemblance to Sasuke Uchiha, however there was one major difference. Sasuke Uchiha always held a look of absolute hatred and utter loathing for his brother and people he believed were weak, as well as a desire for power and revenge. This boy's eyes held nothing, they had no emotion whatsoever. Naruto instantly knew that this boy worked for Danzo, who had a habit of turning his men into emotionless puppets. He was most likely sent here to test me, but why would he do it so openly? More important, what does Danzo gain by this? It's well known that I'm considered an S-rank ninja on par with a Kage, so he knows that anyone less than another S-class ninja could never really challenge me. Naruto shook his head. I don't have enough information on the man to make an accurate estimation of anything. I'll deal with this first and see what I can find out later. Naruto watched as the pale-skinned youth took a brush and began to write on the scroll that was in his lap. A few seconds later more of those ink tigers hot out. Shikamaru. Naruto shouted at the lazy Jonin, who just sighed and muttered a quick troublesome before going through several hand seals. Ninpu. Kage Nui no Jutsu. Ninja art. Shadow sewing jutsu. The Nara heir's shadow shot up from the ground, impaling the ink tigers and allowing Naruto to continue moving. More ink beasts leapt at Naruto, who was about to skewer them with a wind blade, only for Choji to enlarge his arm and slice them apart with his halberd. Nodding in thanks, Naruto continued, putting on a burst of speed that made him all but invisible. 6 more ink beasts came towards the blur that represented Naruto. With Susanoo still in hand, Naruto made several slashing motions as he passed them. He did not stop as the ink beasts burst back to their original state. Reappearing in front of the pale-skinned youth, Naruto aimed a slash for his head. The young teen acted fast, whipping out his tanto and blocking Naruto's slash. However, he had not expected the strength behind the blonde's attack, and the ground under him cracked as he was pushed onto a knee. What strength? Thought Sai as he struggled to keep from being skewered. You know it's not very nice to attack a fellow leaf shinobi, Naruto said in his emotionless voice. Do so again and I will make sure you regret such a choice. I apologize, the black-haired teen said as he gave Naruto a smile that was so fake the blonde wanted to throw up. I was merely testing your skills as a shinobi, and I have to say with how terrible you are you must not have any balls. Naruto blinked, then blinked again as what the pale-skinned youth said. When it did, Naruto looked at the young man with a hard look, and for the first time in his life Sai felt a small chill run down his spine. Before the black-haired teen could do anything, Naruto exploded, sending him flying back and smashing into a wall where a large human-shaped crater formed under him. Sai pulled himself out of the way crater and shook his head to clear it of the ringing. Looking up, he saw Naruto staring at him from the roof where he had been previously. Blinking, he looked again and saw Naruto had disappeared. Sai frowned before sushioning to go report to Danzo. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto appeared within his home a few minutes after the confrontation. Walking down the stairs, Naruto entered his study. He began to open several drawers, searching for something his dad had been working on before the Kyuubi attack. Naruto frowned as he continued his search, wondering why he could not find it. Expanding his search, Naruto made several clones to go look through the library. Sitting down in his chair, Naruto took out some parchment, high-quality ink and a brush. While he waited for his clones, Naruto began to write out some of the ideas he had on new seals, or modifications of previously existing seals. Hey boss. Naruto turned around in his seat just in time to catch a scroll that one of his kage bushins tossed to him. Turning the scroll over, the blonde saw that it was what he was looking for. Thanks, dispel yourself to alert the others. The clone nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Turning back around, Naruto nipped his thumb and spread some blood across the seal. There was a slight hiss as his skin healed up and the seal disappeared in a puff of smoke. Unrolling the scroll, Naruto smiled as he saw the almost completed work. Setting it down, Naruto began to work. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Omake. Dickless, my apologize, the black-haired teen said as he gave Naruto a smile that was so fake the blonde wanted to throw up. I was merely testing your skills as a shinobi, and I have to say with how terrible you are you must not have any balls, dickless. Naruto blinked, and how would you know if I have no balls or not? For that matter, why are you so interested in my dick? 'Cause. You know, it's totally cool if you're into that kind of thing, but if that's the case you may want to go to Oto. I hear Orochimaru has a fetish for pale-skinned boys. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Within one of his many bases, Orochimaru sneezed. Someone must be talking about me, the pale-skinned man mused as he rubbed his nose. I hope I can use them for my experiments. Who cares if someone was talking about you? Sasuke scoffed. Now get back to training me. Of course Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru said as he licked his lips as he restarted, training Sasuke. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Because of how pathetic you are, the pale teen replied with a smile. Ah, I see, Naruto said, nodding his head as if what the pale-skinned youth had told him explained it all. And how exactly am I pathetic? Naruto put more of his strength against Susanoo, making the tanto the pale teen was using begin to crack. Does it have something to do with strength? Because if so, we both know I'm stronger than you. Naruto used even more strength to shatter the other boy's blade. Spinning around, he kicked the pale teen in the head, sending the boy flying. Or maybe it's that you don't think I have skill. Sai looked up to see Naruto in front of him. I assure you I have far more skill than you. Sai tried to create several ink beasts, but the Naruto in front of him exploded, making the boy once again crash into a wall. Sai managed to get up just in time to see a sword heading for him to take his head off. He rolled to the left, only to get kicked in the face. Come on, Naruto said as he smashed another foot in the pale boy's face. What was this you were saying about me lacking balls? You can't even take a beating like a man. Naruto smashed a fist in Sai's face, making the boy stumble back. Don't insult people if you know things are not true. Naruto did a heel drop on Sai's shoulder, sending the teen into the ground and knocking him out. Naruto stood over the unconscious boy with a grin. You know, I don't think you've had enough punishment yet. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. The next morning, Sai could be found still unconscious with people staring up at him, taking pictures as he hung from the flagpole. He was completely naked, save his underwear, which was being used to hang him on said flagpole. On the boy's face, in red bold print were the words, I like dicks, written for everyone to see. Chapter 14. Nanabe, Itachi and Kisame were walking through the woods on the borders of Hai no Kuni near Takigakure, Hidden Water Village, heading towards their next mark. To most the pair would seem quite odd, one being a person who looked more like a shark than a man with a bloodlust to match. While the other was vastly shorter, with a pair of blood-red eyes and a demeanor that was cold enough to freeze hell. Despite their vast differences both in countenance and battle styles, they were the only pair within Akatsuki that truly got along. Both held a great respect for the other and considered each other equals, though Kisame would often defer to Itachi in combat situations due to the man's finesse and tactically sound mind. Kisame turned to look at his partner as they walked. So how are we gonna get this one? It was the question he had been wanting to know for a while. The Nanabe was not originally their target, having been Kakazu's before the man was killed. From what Kisame had heard, the Nanabe Jinchuriki had two powers that made her quite a difficult opponent. Her bugs, which were similar to those in the Aburame clan, and her super-powered strength that was said to be on par with Tsunade due to her affinity with the earth element. And while Kisame was sure he could take her if push came to shove, having a ninja who could use their bugs to drain your chakra like he did with Samahata would make it much tougher. Itachi did not even bother to look at Kisame as he spoke, using the same emotionless tone he always did. You are going to be the distraction that draws her out and the other ninja to you. When you do, I will take care of her since her bugs put you at a disadvantage. Kisame gave the Uchiha Slayer a shark-like grin. So I go in and cause mass amounts of damage. The shark man chuckled. Sounds good to me. Readjusting Samahata on his back, Kisame grinned at the prospect of fighting a lot of enemies. It was something that never failed to bring a smile to his face. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Shibuki gave a happy grin as he finally finished all of the paperwork for his village. Leaning back in his chair, the young village leader let out a sigh. Not much had changed for the village in the last 4 years. It still looked the same as ever, with the large tree in the middle where the hero's water was produced stood as tall and grand as ever. The waterfall entrance and natural defenses of Takigakure had allowed for it to escape damage from all 3 shinobi wars, as well as keep the country from ever being invaded. The only real change that had happened came when Jiraiya had arrived in Taki to warn them about the threat of Akatsuki. Ever since then there had been much debate on what to do with Fu, the Jinchuriki for the Nanabe no Kabutomushi, seven-tailed beetle, and his sister. Many of the elders of the village felt that Fu should either be exiled or even just outright given to Akatsuki in order to appease them. Many of the civilians unfortunately agreed with them. Like in most places, Jinchuriki were just as feared and hated here. However, Shibuki as the village leader had adamantly shot down all of their attempts at getting rid of his sister, claiming that not only would it be foolish to give her to a group of criminals, but also reminding them that Kakazu had been a part of that group before his remains had been sent to Taki, courtesy of Naruto. That had been the only reason the elders did not press the issue as much as they would have, since anything related to Kakazu was considered taboo. Even though not much had changed for the village, it had for Shibuki. A little over 4 years ago he had been nothing but a coward, writing on the fame of his father who had used the hero's water to save the village from a threat it had been faced with, sacrificing his life in the process. All that had changed when one blonde Konoha shinobi had come to Taki on a mission. During the time Shibuki's former teacher Suian had betrayed the village in order to get his hands on the hero's water, at first Shibuki had been too afraid to do anything. His father had died protecting the village, which had given Shibuki his cowardly nature since he did not want to die. Naruto had been the one to change his outlook, going down to face Suian knowing that he was outclassed. It had been that never say die attitude that had given Shibuki the courage to fight for his village, even going as far as to drink the hero's water, something that would normally kill the person who used it. He had miraculously survived after using the hero's water, and after that had taken up being a true leader to Takigakure. A large explosion within the village knocked the young man out of his thoughts. Before he could even so much as stand up, one of his men burst into the room panting heavily. "What the hell is going on?" asked Shibuki in a commanding voice. "It's Akatsuki. Shibuki-sama," the Chunin panted. "They're here, inside Taki." Shibuki's eyes widened at this information. He knew it would only be a matter of time before Akatsuki tried something to get his sister, or more specifically the Nanabi. It was for that reason that he had ordered Fu not to do any missions, keeping her within the village where he felt that she could be better protected by using the village's natural defenses. He would have never assumed that Akatsuki would be so reckless as to actually attack her within the village. "Gather all of our shinobi forces," Shibuki ordered. "They've come for Fu. We have no idea what a group of such criminals will do if they get their hands on the power of the Nanabi. Also send out one of our hawks to contact Konoha and request for them to send aid." Shibuki did not give the man any time to answer as he put on his Jonin flak jacket and left, rushing towards the explosion. After the Suian incident, Shibuki had trained himself as hard as he could. He was pleased to say that he was now officially considered one of the strongest ninja Taki had ever produced, and he would be damned if he could not protect his home. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Kisame grinned as all of the ninja in the village headed for him. Reaching a hand over his back, the shark man pulled Samahata off of him as he stood on the surface of the water next to the hero's tree. Soon enough the ninja came, surrounding and charging at him. Grinning, he unleashed his carefully hidden reserves of chakra, letting his power explode from his body. His chakra was so strong that it was visible as a deep blue color, and had caused many of the ninja who had been charging to stop in shock. This was the reason that Kisame had earned his nickname the Biju without a tail. Kisame's reserves were nearly without equal, the only one being his superior in chakra reserves being Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and easily rivaled that of some of the lesser Biju like the Ikibi and Nibi. Not giving the Taki ninja a chance to recover, Kisame rushed them. Swinging his sword with reckless, yet controlled zeal. Samahata smashed into one of the shinobi, taking the man with him as he continued on to hit another one, sending the two flying away with broken ribs. The others soon snapped out of their stupor and charged, one of them closing distance with Kisame, attempting to impale him with a kunai. Only for Kisame to smash Samahata on the man's shoulder, dragging the sword as the scaly spikes came out and tore the man's skin off. The shark man did not bother with the man as he screamed, merely kicking him out of the way as another ninja came up to him. Kisame grinned as he ducked under a swipe from a water sword, coming up as he smashed Samahata into the kunoichi's stomach, getting the woman to cough up blood before sending her flying away. Suigaden. Water release. Water fang projectile. Kisame turned around as he heard the ninjutsu called to see several dozen water fangs coming towards him. The man merely gave a shark-like grin as he put Samahata back on his back and began doing his own hand seals. Sujinheki. A giant wall of water formed around Kisame, blocking the water fangs from hitting him. When the attack subsided, Kisame went through even more hand seals before calling out his jutsu. Suikuden no Jutsu. Water release. Water shark projectile technique. A large column of water rose from the surface of the lake, easily reaching a height of 60 feet before charging the Taki ninja, taking the shape of a shark halfway through. There were several pained screams as the jutsu tore straight through many of the ninja, either outright ripping them apart or taking off limbs. The jutsu crashed back into the lake some distance away, taking that as his cue. Kisame grabbed his sword again and charged. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX, Shizun-san. Shizune looked up to see a man running towards her carrying a message in his hand. Noticing the man's frantic look, she began asking questions to calm the man. What's wrong? Here, letter. Takigakur, the man said in between his pants. Shizune took the letter and began to read. She felt her eyes widen at the news the carrier hawk from Takigakur had sent them. Knowing that they had to respond quickly to this, she made her way to the Hokage tower. Rushing up the stairs and not even bothering to knock as she usually does, the young woman barged in on her sensei. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade spit out the sake she had been drinking at the surprising intrusion. She looked over at Shizune and was about to offer some excuse about being caught drinking when she noticed her apprentice's worried countenance. The busty blonde instantly went into her Hokage mode. What's wrong, Shizune? Akatsuki is attacking Takigakur. Shizune cried out, causing Tsunade's eyes to widen. We just received a message from them that they are under attack. The description given indicates they are being attacked by Kisame Hoshigaki. Tsunade narrowed her eyes as she realized something. Did the reports mention anything on his partner? Shizune shook her head. No, Tsunade-sama. He apparently has not been seen. Tsunade nodded as she made her split-second decision on what to do. They could not afford to let Akatsuki get their hands on any of the biju, so they would need to act fast. Get me Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Kakashi Hatake, Sakura Haruno and Sai, the blonde woman ordered. Shizune looked surprised. Tsunade-sama, are you sure? I mean Naruto-kun is. I know very well that Naruto is also a target. Tsunade interrupted the black-haired woman. However, he is also the only other S-rank ninja in the village right now besides me and the only one who can face Akatsuki one-on-one and win. Now hurry up and get them. Hi Tsunade-sama. Shizune said as she rushed out of the room. Tsunade turned to look at the village, a troubled look crossing her visage. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto finished putting on his shinobi clothing and made his way down to the kitchen. A clone had already cooked breakfast and had it set on the table. Sitting down, Naruto piled as much food as it could fit onto it and began to eat as he planned out the day. He had just finished his training routine. Maybe he should go and get a mission or see if one of his friends wanted to spar. As he continued eating, a ring came, signifying someone was at the gate. Pushing his plate away from him, Naruto got up and made his way over to the door. Walking outside, he moved over to the gate and unlocked it. Opening it up, he came face to face with a flustered Shizune. Shizune-chan, is something wrong? Naruto asked as he picked up her increased heart rate and tension. Tsunade-sama has a mission for you, Shizune said as she looked at him. It's Akatsuki. Naruto's eyes widened. Before narrowing, he grabbed onto Shizune and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Itachi breezed through the now nearly deserted streets as he made his way towards the hideout, where, if the information Akatsuki had received was correct, was where the Nanabi had been hidden. A simple genjutsu surrounding him made the clan slayer all but invisible to the naked eye as he moved. He was on the opposite side of the village from where Kisami's battle was going on, a tactical decision made by him so he could get the Nanabi without much resistance. Looking ahead of him, Itachi saw a large dome-like structure where the Nanabi was supposed to be held. Before he got there, however, the black-haired man was forced to dodge a swarm of beetles. Looking up, Itachi spotted Fu standing on top of the dome, glaring down at him. Fu was a girl in her mid to late teens with an orange hair clip in her short green hair. She had lightly tanned skin and pink eyes. Her ninja attire consisted of a white shirt that exposed her midriff and she had mesh net armor underneath. On her arms from about mid-bicep to the end of her wrist were white arm bands. Her Takigakur Hite 8 was displayed on her right arm. She was wearing fishnet shorts and had a short white apron skirt over it. The last article she had on her was an odd-looking red cylindrical object strapped to her back by red straps that crisscrossed her chest. I figured Akatsuki would come here looking for me, Fu said as she glared at Itachi. I should have realized it would not matter if I was in a village or not. Itachi ignored her words as he spoke. Come with me and we will not harm this village any more than we already have. Fu's eyes narrowed even more. What makes you think I'd ever come with the likes of you? I know what you want to do with me. I have no intention of dying because you want the Nanabi. As she said this, a swarm of bugs moved in on Itachi, who jumped out of the way and sent a fireball at the swarm, which dissolved before the fireball could hit them. Itachi did not let any emotions that might come on his face show as he prepared to battle the Nanabe Jinchuriki and take her by force. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto appeared within the Hokage office with Shizune to see that Kakashi and Sakura already there. He also noticed the odd pale boy who had attacked him the other day but ignored him for the time being. You called Tsunade-sama? Naruto asked as he looked at the woman, using a respectful suffix due to the serious nature of why he was here. Yes, Tsunade said as she looked at him and the other three in the room. We have just received a request for help from Takigakure. Akatsuki is attacking them in order to acquire the Nanabe Jinchuriki Fu. She watched as Naruto's eyes narrowed before continuing. You four are going there to assist in. 4. Naruto questioned as he turned to look at the pale-skinned youth. You mean he is on my team? Yes, Tsunade said. This is Sai. He will be working with you for the foreseeable future. I see, Naruto thought to himself. Sadanzo is starting to consider me enough of a threat that he wants someone on my team to watch me and discover some kind of weakness to exploit in order to get me under his thumb. Out loud Naruto said, very well, do we know which Akatsuki members are attacking Taki? The description we were given matches that of Kisame Hoshigaki, Tsunade informed him. And Itachi? Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes in thought. Tsunade shook her head. He was not in the report. Meaning that Kisame is merely a distraction to keep the Taki ninja occupied. In the meantime Itachi will find the Nanabe and take her before they know what's happening, the blonde deduced within his mind. It was a sound plan, he had to admit, one that depending on the enemy could be used to great effect. Naruto was shaken out of his thoughts by Tsunade. Naruto, you will be in charge of this mission since you have the most experience when dealing with Akatsuki members. Naruto nodded as he turned to address his team. I want you three to prepare for an S-class mission. You have 1 hour to get your equipment ready and then meet me at the East Gate. Kakashi and Sakura nodded, both somewhat surprised by Naruto's now commanding presence. Sai merely gave the blonde a smile. We will be there, it will be a pleasure working with a dickless wonder like you. Naruto blinked in surprise, before narrowing his eyes as he resisted the urge to kill the teen for his insult. He could not afford to kill someone when he had a mission to prepare for. He would just have to prank him later. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Kisame grinned as most of the Taki ninja lay dead or dying around him. The few that were still capable of fighting were eyeing him warily. Alright, so who wants to be the next victim to help me feed Samahata? The shark man asked, looking around him as the ninja tensed. How about no one? Kisame and the others turned to see Shibuki looking at the Akatsuki member with a harsh glare. I'm not going to let you get away with this and I'm not gonna let you get my sister. Kisame chuckled. If you say so, Gaki, though I think it would be more convincing if you backed up your words with action. Kisame swung Samahata as if it weighed nothing, setting on his shoulder as a shocker-like smirk graced his face. Shibuki said nothing as he shot off the branch he was standing on, going through a string of hand seals before calling out his jutsu. Suiten. Suiryuden no Jutsu. A large water dragon rose up from the lake, roaring as it launched itself at Kisame. The shark man lifted Samahata over his head. When the water dragon came near him, smashed his sword down, breaking the water dragon apart and absorbing some of the excess chakra. Jumping into the water, Kisame swam to Shibuki at speeds that most people could not run. Jumping out of the water, the shark-like member of Akatsuki tried to smash Samahata into Shibuki's stomach, however the Taki leader evaded to the side. Pulling out a kunai, Shibuki threw it at Kisame's arm. Pulling his arm back, Kisame used Samahata to bat the kunai away. Spinning around, Kisame swung Samahata at Shibuki, who ducked under the large blade and tried to get in close. He was unable to as Kisame's foot smashed into his ribs, sending the village leader flying. Shibuki flipped in the air and landed on the water's surface, skidding back a bit as he held his ribs. Thankfully he did not feel anything that was broken. Standing back up, he was just in time to see Kisame finishing a set of hand seals before calling out his jutsu. Suiten. Daibakufu no Jutsu. A giant vortex of water shot up in front of Kisame before flying towards Shibuki. Cursing, the young man dived out of the way. Rolling across the water's surface, he came up only to see Kisame in front of him, swinging Samahata down at his head. The Taki leader was able to get out of the way of the man's sword, which missed smashing his head and ended up sending water flying everywhere. He could not, however, dodge the knee that planted itself in his gut, Shibuki coughed up some blood as he was sent flying back. Skidding across the water, he was able to get back on his feet, but had to bend on a knee and hold his stomach. "You're not too bad, Gaki," Kisame complimented as he walked up to Shibuki at a slow pace, "but you're about 50 years too soon to beat me." Shibuki cursed as he felt pain rack his body. Despite all the training he had done, he could not defeat this man. A stray thought crossed his mind: he could use that, but he knew what the consequences would be if he did. He shook the thought off. It did not matter. All that did was that he protect his home. Reaching into his pocket, Shibuki pulled out a vial of liquid. It was a small sample of the hero's water. Opening the vial, he drank the contents, chucking the vial away as his chakra burst out of him, increasing to 10 times what it had been. Kisame stopped where he was and looked on curiously. Honestly, he was not very concerned with the boy's chakra increase, which was now almost at his own level. Even if it went above that, he could just use Samahata to absorb the chakra. Still, the fight should be much more interesting now, Kisame thought with a shark-like grin. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto searched his surroundings as he and the 3 members of his squad were jumping through the trees, making sure they were on the right path to Takigakure. As soon as the 3 had appeared at the gate, Naruto had set a grueling pace, telling them to keep up or they would be left behind, knowing that he had very little time before they managed to capture the Jinchuriki there. Thankfully, the only person who seemed to be having a problem keeping up was Sakura, who while having gotten stronger was still just a chunin. Naruto and consequently the other 3 stopped as they reach a waterfall, behind which the blonde's enhanced senses picked up the sound of battle. It sounds like the battle is still going on, which means that they have not managed to capture Fu yet, Naruto began without preamble. According to the report on the fight we received from Taki, only Kisame is actually fighting. This means that his partner Itachi is most likely either searching for, or currently engaging the Jinchuriki in battle. Wait. Sakura said. Itachi, isn't he? He's the one Sasuke wants to kill, Naruto said. Itachi Uchiha. Now Kakashi and Sai, I want you two to engage Kisame and keep him from causing any more damage. Sakura, I want you to help heal the wounded that you find, since you're more suited for a support role and will need to be in top form if Kakashi or Sai get hurt. Meanwhile, I'm going to find Itachi and deal with him. Hopefully we'll be able to dispose of them, but if not, so long as they do not get their hands on the Jinchuriki, we'll be fine. Are you sure you can handle Itachi on your own, Naruto? Kakashi asked in a worried tone. I mean, I know you've gotten powerful, but don't worry about me, Kakashi. Naruto cut the man off. I know my limits. I'm positive that I can beat Itachi should it come down to it. I don't see how someone who seems to be lacking a penis can fight an S-rank criminal, Sai replied with the fake smile he had been giving them since the start. Naruto glared at the boy. This kid had been nothing but trouble since they had met. Aside from the fact that the smile he gave was obviously fake and the boy had the emotional range of a toothpick, he also seemed to have some weird kind of dick fetish. He had mentioned Naruto's penis at least 6 different times when the blonde was speaking, most of which were an insinuation to Naruto's lack of one. Yep, this kid was so lucky they were on a mission right now. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that, so that I don't end up killing you, Naruto said. He turned to look at Kakashi. You're in charge until I get back, try not to get yourself killed. With that, Naruto disappeared. You heard the man, Kakashi said. Sai and I will go first. Sakura, you come in after us, and when we have Kisame fully engaged, I want you to start helping the wounded. Got it, Kakashi-sensei. Sakura said as Sai gave a nod of affirmation. Good, then let's go. Kakashi and Sai sped off into the waterfall entrance to Taki with Sakura following close behind. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Shibuki fell onto his knees as he felt his body begin to shut down and weaken, a side effect of using the hero's water. The village leader knew that he did not have much time left. The first time he had used the hero's water, he was lucky since his reserves had not amounted enough to really make the hero's water affect him. This time, however, his reserves were just a little under a standard cages and he would not be able to get out of the full effects of using the water. Looking up, he saw the grinning figure of Kisame stalking towards him. Shibuki had thrown everything he could at the shark man, from taijutsu to S-rank ninjutsu, none of it had worked. The man was like a monster, with chakra reserves that seemed to have no rival and monstrous speed and strength to match. Nothing he had done affected the shark-like man. Said man stopped a little ways away and grinned. Well, that was actually quite fun, I'm impressed. It's almost a shame I gotta kill you now, though it looks like you're about to die anyway. Kisame chuckled as Shibuki glared at him. The shark man was just about to use one of his favorite jutsu when the sound of 1,000 birds chirping filled the air. Turning their heads, the two saw none other than Kakashi Hatake racing towards them, his Sharingan eye blazing and lightning coming out of the palm of his hand. Racing up to Kisame, Kakashi thrust out his hand, forcing the shark man to jump back as he pulled out Samahata. The jutsu clashed with the large blade before dissipating from the sword, sucking up all of the energy. Kakashi was forced to jump back as his jutsu disappeared. Well, if it isn't Sharingan no Kakashi, Kisame said with a large grin, you managed to get here quite fast. Really? Kakashi said in a nonchalant voice, that's too bad, I was hoping to use my latest excuse for being tardy. Oh well. I hope you give me more of a challenge than what I've been getting so far, Kisame said as he ignored Kakashi's words. Well, I suppose since I'm here I might as well, Kakashi replied, his nonchalant voice belying his serious demeanor. Before Kisame could say anything more, another voice spoke out. Chuho Giga. Several lions made of ink shot down from the tree and came towards Kisame, who used Samahata to smash them apart. Doing so, he got covered in ink as the beasts were destroyed. Using the distraction Sai provided, Kakashi went through more hand signs, calling out his jutsu as he took a deep breath. Kaiten. Gokyako no Jutsu. Kakashi blew out a large fireball that headed for Kisame. However, the shark-like Akatsuki was not about to let himself get fried. Going through his own hand seals, he called out his jutsu. Suiten. Sujinheki. A large wall of water formed around Kisame, blocking the fireball, which dissipated with a hiss of steam. The water wall dropped, revealing no one in it, putting Kakashi on guard. Taking out a kunai, the Sharingan ninja looked around for his enemy. He spotted the shark man when Kisame shot out of the water, barreling towards the scarecrow. Kakashi jumped out of the way, pulling several kunai out of his pouches. He sent them sailing towards Kisame. Said ninja grinned as used his sword as a shield, going back into the water and swimming towards Kakashi. The copy ninja jumped into the air just as Kisame came up and attempted to smash him with Samahata. Going through several hand signs, Kakashi called out a jutsu that Naruto had taught him in one of their training sessions together. Raiden. Gion. Kisame cursed as a blast of lightning shot out of Kakashi's mouth and headed towards him. Landing on the water, Kisame jumped into the air. The lightning jutsu hit the water, sending electricity everywhere. Several volts traveled along the water droplets Kisame made and hit him. The shark-like ninja grit his teeth as he pushed past the pain, putting Samahata on his back as he went through several hand seals. Suiten. Suikuden no Jutsu. A column of water rose from the lake and barreled itself towards Kakashi, taking the shape of a shark as it got closer. It smashed into the copy ninja, only for Kakashi to burst into smoke before turning into a log. While the battle was going on, Sakura hurried over to Shibuki. Shibuki. Shibuki looked up to see the pink-haired girl that had been with Naruto during Suien's betrayal. Sakura-san, he said in a haggard voice as the effects of the hero's water took its toll on him. Sakura kneeled down next to him and began to run a medical scanning jutsu over him. She furrowed her brow at what she found. While there was nothing wrong with his muscles, bones, ligaments or joints, there was a serious issue with his chakra system. All of his chakra coils were breaking down, the tenketsu were literally starting to shrivel up. Sakura got out a scroll with medical supplies. Unsealing its contents, she grabbed a jar of soldier pills. Here, take this, she said as she put it near his mouth. Shibuki looked at it for a second before taking the pill in his mouth and chewing. Blah. He tried to resist the urge to spit out the terrible tasting pill. Chewing it up and swallowing. While he took the special soldier pills Sakura had created, the pink-haired girl began to pour medical chakra into Shibuki's coils, keeping them from becoming more damaged until the pills could do their work. You're very lucky we got here in time, Sakura told Shibuki. Had we gotten here any later, you would not have survived whatever is happening to your chakra coils. Good to know, Shibuki said in a strained voice as he finished swallowing the rest of the horrific pill. He was actually beginning to think it was better to just die than eat something that tasted as horrid as these pills. Sakura did not say anything else as she continued her work. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Looking up, the Uchiha Slayer surveyed the destroyed landscape that had been caused by Fu's insane strength. The battle had been a lot harder than he had anticipated. Due to the use of her bugs, Itachi's greatest advantage had been negated. Contrary to what some might think, Itachi was not a ninjutsu specialist. While he was good at it, better than most even, his true specialty was the subtle power of genjutsu. Unlike most of his clan who preferred to flaunt their Sharingan and show off the jutsu they copied, Itachi felt that deception and misdirection were better suited for a ninja, and that genjutsu accomplished the task better than other ninja arts. That power had not worked on the Nanabi Jinchuriki, whose bugs would dispel his illusions before they could set in. Also because he could not kill her, he had been unable to use his Mangekyo ability Amataresu. This had forced him to use ninjutsu and taijutsu, though even with just those two spheres to use, Itachi still won with relatively little injury. He walked over to Fu's unconscious form and was just about to lift her up when his instincts had him dodging a hail of kunai that came from the left. You know, I was wondering when we would meet again. Itachi looked towards the source of the voice, to see Naruto looking at him with a blank expression that matched his own. It is good to see you again, Naruto-kun, Itachi said in an emotionless voice as he stood up. If the Uchiha was surprised, he did not show it, merely stared at Naruto with his emotionless mask. I hear you have gotten much stronger. Naruto shed his weighted trench coat, knowing that to beat a Sharingan user he would need speed. One does not train with a Sennin and not learn a thing or two, Naruto replied. In any event, I'm here to make sure you don't take Fu over here. I see, was all Itachi said as he prepared to battle against Naruto, knowing he would have to go all out from the start to win. For a long moment the two were just stared each other down, Naruto slipping into his father's stance as Itachi's Sharingan began to spin. On an unspoken signal the two began, Naruto tossed several kunai as he jumped towards a building. Those kunai had their momentum arrested when they met Itachi's shuriken as he too jumped to a building, this one on the opposite side of Naruto. The blonde shinobi launched several shuriken this time, focusing wind chakra into them. In retaliation Itachi threw some more shuriken himself, but was forced to dodge when his own weapons were sliced in half by Naruto's. Looking up, Itachi spotted Naruto heading right for him. He blocked the incoming strike but was still sent back from the power the blow held. Flipping onto his feet, Itachi pointed at Naruto. Itachi vanished from view and soon fire began to surround Naruto. Realizing this was merely a genjutsu, Naruto stopped all of his chakra and sent a large pulse of Kyabe's chakra. The burst destroyed the genjutsu and unknowingly broke the second layer that Itachi had placed over it. Naruto watched as Itachi shimmered into existence right next to him, blocking the strike from the S-rank criminal before lashing out with his own fist. Itachi ducked under Naruto's fist and came up trying to smash an open palm into the blonde's torso. Naruto twisted his body to the side as he redirected Itachi's attack and came at the shinobi with an elbow. Itachi jumped away, beginning a set of hand seals. Kaiten. Goryuka no Jutsu. A large fire dragon shot towards Naruto, who held up both hands, palms facing the dragon as it charged at him. Suiten. Suiryuden no Jutsu. A dragon made of water coalesced in front of Naruto. It raced towards the incoming fire dragon. The two jutsu exploded against each other in a blast of smoke and steam. Itachi looked into the smoke as he prepared for anything. Despite this, he was caught off guard when a pale blast of lightning shot through the steam. Quick use of the Kariwimi got him away from the blast, however a second later Naruto appeared in front of him. The blonde ran Itachi through with Susanoo, only for the black-haired man to disappear in a puff of smoke. A large ball of fire came at Naruto from above. Using his speed, the blonde was able to dodge. Pointing a finger where the blast came from, Naruto sent another Byakurai towards Itachi and went straight through the man's chest. However, as Itachi hit the ground, his body turned into a flock of crows. Naruto had just enough time to realize it was a genjutsu before a lightning-covered hand shot into his back. You have grown quite strong, Naruto-kun, came the emotionless voice of Itachi behind him. To be able to keep up with me means you must have trained quite hard, however you are still not at my level, give up. Naruto turned his head and smirked at Itachi, right before he exploded. Itachi was barely able to make use of a Kawarmi to escape, however Naruto was already waiting for him. Kai. Naruto felt half of the weight for the gravity seals and resistance seals on his body release, making him feel hundreds if not thousands of pounds lighter. He struck out at Itachi with a knife edge to the throat. The Uchiha Akatsuki member tilted his head only for Naruto to grab him by the back of the neck and pull him into a headbutt. Itachi stumbled back with a bloody nose as Naruto came at him again, throwing a high kick-low kick combination. Itachi ducked the first and swept away the second. He did not even notice the third one until he felt a foot connect with his chin. Itachi used the momentum of his kick to get airborne and caught Naruto with his own foot. The blonde jumped back as Itachi's foot clipped his chin, flipping in the air and landing back on his feet. Fudan. Rinkuden. Naruto sucked in a deep breath before hitting himself on the gut, sending a condensed ball of wind chakra at Itachi. Going through several hand signs, Itachi sucked in a breath as he called out his jutsu. Kaden. Gokyaku no Jutsu. A large fireball came out of Itachi's mouth and headed over to the cannonball-sized wind bullet. Due to wind's weakness against fire, any sort of fire jutsu would not only plow right through a wind jutsu, but the wind would increase its power even if going in an opposite direction. That was what would have happened here, if a Naruto Kage Bushin had not appeared under the fireball and shot a water bullet at it. The condensed ball of water went straight through the fireball, leaving a large hole in it before it dissipating. The wind bullet continued on and hit Itachi, who disappeared in another puff of smoke. Naruto spun around on his heel, stretching out his arm to block the incoming kick. Grabbing Itachi's foot, Naruto spun it, sending the Uchiha spinning before landing on his back. Itachi struck out with a leg, managing to clip Naruto on the foot and sent him sprawling to the ground. The two pushed themselves back up, moving into a series of flips as they jumped away from each other. Naruto flicked his wrist and shot several kunai at Itachi, who dodged them, remembering what happened last time. Itachi began going through several hand signs as he prepared another jutsu. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Several basketball-sized fireballs sailed towards Naruto. The blonde shinobi's cheeks bulged before several water bullets shot out of his mouth. Connecting with the fireballs and creating steam, Itachi came out of the steam with a tanto in his hand. In response, Naruto unsealed Susanoo, blocking the left side slash. Naruto moved the locked blades up and over his head, snapping a kick at Itachi's midsection. Itachi lifted his leg, letting his shin take the hit, though Naruto smirked when he noticed the normally emotionless face wince. Pulling back his blade, Itachi came in with a thrust to impale the blonde. Naruto redirected the attack to his right. Closing the distance, he smashed an elbow in Itachi's ribs, only for the man to disappear in a swirl of flower petals. When did he get me with a genjutsu? Naruto wondered as he dispelled it. He was just in time to twist his body as Itachi tried to stab him from behind. This time it managed to graze his torso before Naruto brought his sword up and redirected the attack over their heads, locking the two blades together. With their blades locked, Naruto threw a fist at Itachi's face. Itachi tilted his head to dodge the blow, however Naruto encased his fist in wind and Itachi was sent sailing back with the same force as if he had been hit by Tsunade. Itachi flipped onto his feet. Looking up, he saw everything going dark until he was consumed by blackness. For just a moment Itachi actually felt a hint of fear. While he never took the same pride in his eyes that the Uchiha clan had, he still had the same fear of going blind. To not be able to see anything despite having his Sharingan active was a frightful thing. However, he knew it was a genjutsu and flooded his chakra coils with as much chakra as he could muster. Kai. The genjutsu dispelled just in time to see Naruto run up to impale him. The blonde ran Itachi through, only for the Uchiha to turn into a log. Naruto cursed as he turned around and saw a fireball sailing towards him. Flicking his wrist, Naruto unsealed a tri-pronged kunai. He began to spin the Hiraishin kunai in his grip as the fireball sailed towards him. When it reached, rather than explode, the fireball was sucked up into his kunai. Itachi felt his eyes widen as he saw the technique that he had seen the Yondaime do several times in the past. He had not realized that Naruto had come that far with the Hiraishin. A whistling noise snapped his attention back to reality. Looking up, he saw another tri-pronged kunai heading for him. Jumping back, Itachi let it fall to the ground. However, he was forced to use another kariwimi to escape when the fireball he had launched came out of the kunai. Itachi reappeared on one of the building, his breathing getting a little heavier than before. It seems you truly have gotten strong. Unfortunately, I do not have time to test my strength against you. You mean you no longer can? Naruto said, you're too low on chakra to do any more than the basic academy jutsu. From my estimation you had already used about 1/4 of your chakra to fight Fu. I came in fresh and have far more chakra than you even at full strength. Your genjutsu do not work on me anymore, and only the Tsukiyomi will have a true affect. Itachi's small frown said it all. They both knew he would be unable to continue fighting, and unfortunately for him Naruto still had more than half of his reserves left. Not like it matters anyway. Naruto continued with a grin as he pointed over to where Fu was. Itachi followed the blonde's finger and saw that Fu was gone. He must have had a kage bushin take the Nanabi Jinchuriki away, Itachi thought. He truly has gotten strong. So I see, I doubt torture will get you to tell me where she is. If you could torture me you mean, Naruto shot back, you can't use Tsukiyomi right now and we both know the damage it does to your vision. It seems you really have gotten stronger Naruto-kun, Itachi said, you are correct, I cannot win right now. His Sharingan right eye suddenly morphed into a pinwheel. Naruto's eyes widened as he felt chakra gather in Itachi's now bleeding eye. Amaterasu. A black flame shot from Itachi's eye. Naruto pulled out a scroll from his pouch, unrolling it as he channeled chakra into a seal that was written on the scroll. The black fire was sucked into the seal, which glowed after all of the flames were inside. Naruto rolled up the scroll as he looked around. Itachi was gone. A kage bushin phased into existence besides him before puffing out. A little while later another clone came out from one of the buildings, carrying a still unconscious Fu. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Kisame grinned at Kakashi and Sai who stood several feet away. He had several burn marks from close calls with Raiden Jutsu and a few scrapes, but otherwise still looked capable of fighting. You two are pretty good, it's nice to see that I can have a decent fight here, Kisame spoke with his shark-like grin on his face. But don't think this is over, I haven't even gotten started yet. Kakashi and Sai tensed. Before any of them could act, Itachi appeared next to Kisame. Kisame, this battle has become unfavorable, Itachi said, it seems we will need to re-evaluate Naruto Namikaze's strength. The blonde Gaki's here too huh? Kisame said, well damn had I known that I wouldn't have wasted time with these two. It matters not, Itachi said, blinking the blood that was running down his eye away, what does is that we need to leave since we are at a disadvantage. Kisame sighed but put Samahata on his back, he went through several hand seals and called out a jutsu. Sweeten. Tsunami no jutsu, water. Release. Giant tidal wave jutsu. A large wave rose up in front of Kisame and Itachi, reaching a height of nearly 100 feet before it came crashing down towards the Konoha ninja. Kakashi and Sai jumped out of the way. Sakura grabbed onto Shibuki before jumping up herself. They landed on the tree as the wave crashed against it, shaking the foundations of the tree before settling down. Looking over to where Itachi and Kisame had been, they noticed the two had disappeared. The three Konoha ninja and Shibuki were back on the ground. Kakashi and Sai walked over to Sakura, who was checking over Shibuki to make sure her pills were healing him right. A little while later Naruto appeared next to them, still holding Fu in his arms. He looked over at Shibuki and grinned, wow Shibuki, you look like shit. Yeah well thanks, cause I feel like, his sarcastic response was stopped as the voice registered in his mind. The pitch and timbre were deeper than he remembered but he knew that voice. Looking over he spotted a smirking blonde with blue eyes and 6 whisker marks. Naruto, he exclaimed before spotting who the blonde was holding in his arms. Is she? She's fine, Naruto interrupted, they need the Jinchuriki alive in order to extract their Biju, she's just unconscious is all. Shibuki sighed in relief, that's good, he looked over at Naruto again as he spoke, you know I'm surprised at how fast you got here. Naruto gave a sheepish grin as he put a hand behind his head, however before he could answer, Sakura did it for him. That's because he decided to set a ridiculous pace, Sakura huffed, he claimed if one us fell behind they might as well go home. Naruto shrugged, yeah well just think of it as training, anyway we'd better get you and Sleeping Beauty here to the hospital. Naruto looked around to see many other ninja who had been injured, he blinked for a second, we should probably get them to the hospital too. Shibuki felt like rolling his eyes at the obvious suggestion, you think? XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Fu's eyes fluttered open, groaning as she sat up. Looking around she realized she was in the hospital. Fu furrowed her brow as she wondered what had happened. The last thing she remembered was fighting that Akatsuki member, but she did not look like she had been captured. If she had, she was pretty sure she would not be alive. No. Hearing her brother's voice coming from the room on her left, Fu stood up and walked over to the wall, putting a hand to the wall as the conversation continued. Shibuki, you know this is the best option. Fu blinked when she heard the unfamiliar voice. Deciding to find out who it was, she left her hospital room and entered Shibuki's. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Shibuki looked at the blonde Konoha shinobi with a scowl. I'm not going to let my sister be taken away. I spent too much effort to keep her from being exiled or given to the Akatsuki to let you take her back to Konoha. And what happens if Akatsuki attacks again? Asked Naruto, giving his friend a frustrated look. We might not be able to get here in time, or what if they decide to send more than just 2 members? Your village would be in even more danger. Naruto took a deep breath before plunging on. I'm not saying exile her. After the threat of Akatsuki has been dealt with, she'll come right back. The two had been arguing this point for the past day as they waited for Fu to wake up. Right now the two were in the hospital. Shibuki was lying on the bed, several bandages wrapped around his frame from the injuries he had sustained during his battle with Kisame. Naruto was sitting a little ways away, looking at Shibuki with a determined expression. He knew Shibuki did not want his sister away from him, but he also knew it would not only keep her safe but would actually be good for her. Like him, she had also been hated by nearly everyone in her village. Unlike him, however, she still had it bad. She was still mass hated by the population. Because of this, Shibuki was quite protective of her. He was the only one she would actually talk to. Because of the hatred she suffered from, Naruto had heard that Fu had grown to hate most of humanity due to her neglect. That was another reason Naruto felt she should come with him. If she stayed here, where she was hated, Fu would likely continue to hate humanity. Shibuki opened his mouth to retort, but another voice broke through the room. What's going on, Shibuki-ni-san? The two turned to look at the door. Fu was standing there looking at the two. Shibuki put on a smile as he addressed her. Imo Udo, how are you feeling? Fu shrugged as she walked further into the room, her eyes moving over to Naruto with a wary expression. All right, she replied at last, I'm not sore anymore or anything. What happened? And what are you two talking about? Shibuki was about to answer when Naruto cut him off. Akatsuki came to take. You got in a fight with Itachi Uchiha and lost. Fu scowled a bit at Naruto's rather blunt statement. Even if it was true, no one liked their faults being so blatantly shown. Naruto either didn't notice or didn't care as he continued. Shibuki had sent Konoha a message and the Hokage sent us here. I found Itachi about to take you and battled him, eventually forcing him to a retreat. Naruto watched the various emotions play across Fu's face, fear at almost being caught, and a mixture of gratitude and weariness at him for saving her. Naruto continued, as for what we were talking about, I thought it would be a good idea if you came to live with me in Konoha until Akatsuki has been dealt with. Fu's eyes widened in shock as she looked from Naruto to her brother. For a second she was unsure what to think. You want me to come to Konoha? At Naruto's nod she narrowed her eyes. Why? Because this time you were lucky enough that I was not on a mission, Naruto answered simply. Right now only myself and Jiraiya are capable of fighting S-class criminals due to our freedom from any serious duties. The only other people who can battle them on even grounds are the cages, and they are stuck to their desk most of the time. If I had not been available, Konoha would have been unable to send any aid and you would have been captured. Both Fu and Shibuki winced at that. What he said was harsh, but considering what happened, it was also true. That is why I feel that having you come to Konoha will be beneficial. It will be much easier to protect you that way. Why would you do this? Fu asked. I know who you are and that you're considered a hero here for what you did to help my brother. But you know what I am, so why would you? She trailed off and found a blush spreading across her face as Naruto took off his armor and lifted up his shirt. However, that blush soon turned to shock when she saw the seal on his stomach. I'm helping you because like you I am also a Jinchuriki, Naruto said. Like you I was hated for most of my life. Hell, it wasn't even until my heritage as the Yondaim's son was revealed that people started to look up to me, and even now there are some people who are only acting like they respect me because of who my father was, but still fear and hate me. Naruto put his shirt back down and put the armor on, ignoring the looks of shock on the two Taki ninja. Plus I think it would do you good to get out of a village that hates you. That got the two to pause and think. Right now she was mass hated by the people in Takigakure. Her only solace had been when she was on missions, allowing her to go to cities that did not hate or vilify her. Fu looked at Naruto, tilting her head to side as if trying to solve a puzzle. If I went with you, people would eventually find out about my status, Fu said at last. They would still hate me. Naruto shook his head. No, they wouldn't. I'm well known by now as the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. Sure, some of the older generation might hate you, but the younger generation would look up to you. Fu gained a thoughtful look as Naruto continued. It would also mean you would be protected by myself, Jiraiya and Tsunade, 3S rank ninja. Shibuki was silent as he looked at Fu, who seemed to be deep in thought. He did not want her to go, but in the end it was her decision, and if she wanted to he would support her. After a few minutes of silence, Fu came looked back at Naruto. If this is the best way to deal with Akatsuki, then I will go with you. Naruto nodded. We're going to stay here for a few days while Sakura helps to heal the injured, then we'll leave. Fu nodded as Naruto left the room to give the two some time alone. Are you sure this is what you want? Shibuki asked in concern. Fu shook her head. Yes, I don't want to be looked down on and hated anymore. If what he says is true, then I understand, Shibuki said. If this is what you want, I will support your decision. Fu looked at Shibuki with a rare smile. Thanks, Ni-san. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto walked around Taki as he surveyed some of the damage done by Kisami's assault. It had not been much, most of the damage was done to the ninja forces. As he walked towards the large tree that held the spring for the hero's water, Naruto saw Sai sitting near the edge with a canvas in one hand and a brush in the other. Walking up, the blonde saw that he was painting a picture of the tree. That's a good painting, Naruto said as he looked over Sai's shoulder. Sai's head snapped around and Naruto saw a brief flicker of surprise in the boy's eyes, so he's not just an emotionless puppet after all. After a moment, the pale-skinned youth gave Naruto his fake smile. What can I do for you, dickless? Naruto felt his eyebrows twitch in annoyance. You know we're really going to have to work on your etiquette. Also, can you stop talking about my dick? I don't swing that way. Sai tilted his head. I do not know what you're talking about. I was merely commenting on what I have noticed from observation. Whatever, Naruto said as he rolled his eyes. The blonde turned back to the painting. So you like to paint? Sai looked at his painting and shrugged. I'm not sure. What do you mean you're not sure? Naruto asked in confusion. You either do or you don't. That's just it. I'm not sure, Sai replied with a shrug as he went back to his painting. Naruto sighed at how frustrating Sai was being. If this was what Danzo did to his men, then Naruto was glad the old fool had never been able to sink his claws into him. So you got a name for that painting? Asked Naruto as he sat down. Sai blinked as he stopped painting and looked at the blonde shinobi. No, Sai looked back at his painting and frowned. Well, that's no good, Naruto said. You know every great masterpiece has to have a name, otherwise it's not as memorable. Maybe. Sai said, I've never been good with names. I've tried before, but every time I try and think of one, it never comes to me. Naruto nodded as he realized that Danzo had probably stunted most of this side, which relied more on emotion. The fact that the boy was even painting at all was a miracle since it meant he was not completely indoctrinated. Well, you just have to let them come to you, I guess. What would you name it? Sai asked and Naruto could hear a hint of curiosity in the boy's voice. To be honest, I don't know, Naruto replied, shrugging his shoulders. I'm not an artist and I've never been good at naming things. Hell, even my jutsu names suck. My emotions are felt in a different way than creating art. Emotions? Asked Sai. I don't have any emotions. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. None at all. Don't you feel something when you create work like this? Sai frowned. No, I feel nothing. Naruto stood up. I think you're lying. Sai's head snapped up to look at him. Why else would you paint? I know for a fact that your master Danzo would not like you having an outlet designed to express feelings, and painting is such an outlet. He noticed Sai gaining a thoughtful look. I think deep down you do feel emotions, but they're buried so far underneath that you don't know it. Naruto paused for a moment. Well, whatever, it's none of my business, I guess. Just make sure you're ready to leave 3 days from now. As Naruto walked off, Sai turned to look back at the tree, a thoughtful frown on his face as he continued painting. XXXXXXXXXXXX. So you are telling me you have failed to capture the Nanabe Jinchuriki? Pain asked the holographic figure of Itachi, narrowing his Rinnegan eyes. Itachi kept up his emotionless facade while speaking. Yes, it seems they managed to request aid from Konoha. They came faster than I expected and I was forced to fight Naruto Namikaze. From what I understand, the Nanabe Jinchuriki is now in Konoha under his protection. It seems the Gaki is getting pretty strong. To be able to force Itachi to retreat, Kisame said, a shocker-like smirk forming on his face, makes me wish I had fought him myself. To be so strong means he must be a good boy. Toby yelled, he is like me. Toby is a good boy. Toby shut up yeah. Deidre shouted at the spiraled masked man, how many times have I told you not to be so annoying? Whoops. Sorry Deidre-senpai. Toby said in an embarrassed voice as he rubbed the back of his head. Pain closed his eyes as a troubled look crossed his face. That boy was causing more trouble than he was worth. He would need to be dealt with soon. I will need to think on this new development. All of you are dismissed. The images faded out leaving only Pain, Conan and Toby left. That boy is causing even more problems than his father, Madara said, no longer acting the fool. He will need to be dealt with soon. Pain opened his eyes to look at the man. Should we send the Akatsuki after him? Madara thought about the question for a moment before shaking his head. No, at the moment it would require more power than we currently have, since it would mean going up against Jiraiya and Tsunade as well as Konoha itself. I wish to concentrate our efforts on the other than Jinchuriki. Send Itachi and Kisame after the Yonbi, he has been spotted in Tasuki no Kuni. Deidre and I will go after the Gobi, which has been spotted in the eastern province of Kiba no Kuni, land of fangs. Also, what news of Sasuke? He is still under Orochimaru's guard, Pain said, however the snake Sanin has yet to try and use his immortality jutsu on him. Good, Madara said, I will have need of Sasuke's Sharingan and cannot have Orochimaru getting his hands on it. We have had many failures as of late Pain, I expect them to be rectified soon. With that Madara faded out of existence. Pain scowled as Madara disappeared, he disliked how this man tried to order him around. However he knew that right now it was not possible for him to do anything, it was Madara who had made all of this possible and currently Pain did not have the strength to beat the Sharingan user. But soon he will feel the power of a god. Pain thought as he faded out as well, leaving the only female member of their group left. Konan closed her eyes, she would need to tell Naruto of this development. Soon. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. The trip to the Hokage Tower was for the most part silent. Fu listened as Naruto explained a little bit about Konoha, giving her a bit of a history lesson on the major sites. Walking into the Hokage Tower, the five ninja went up the stairs to the top floor. Naruto walked up to the desk where Shizune was currently going through several files, tapping on it a few times. Naruto got the black-haired woman to look up. Oh Naruto-kun. Shizune exclaimed with a smile, I take it the mission was a success. Naruto gave her a smile. Was there ever any doubt? He asked rhetorically. Yeah, the mission was a success. We also will be having a guest I placed under my protection. At this Shizune noticed the green-haired girl that was with them. I see, she said as she put the files she had been handling down. Walking over to the door she knocked several times before opening it. Tsunade-sama, Naruto-kun has returned from his mission. Naruto and the others followed Shizune in and stopped in front of the desk. Tsunade looked up to see the four ninja she had sent, as well as the new arrival. Report, she said in her Hokage voice. Naruto nodded as he began to explain what had transpired during the mission, from sending Kakashi and Sai to deal with Kisame and Sakura to help heal the injured while he fought Itachi into retreat. After that I invited Fu to stay here under Konoha protection. I also felt it would be a good idea to help with her training so that she can become strong enough to protect herself. Tsunade looked at the green-haired girl, who seemed slightly unsure of herself now that she was actually in Konoha. The busty blonde sighed, somehow she had expected this to happen. I suppose she will be staying in the Namikaze compound then? Tsunade asked. Naruto nodded, yes. Very well, I'll be expecting a written report tomorrow, the blonde woman said in a commanding tone. Naruto nodded before turning to Fu, come on, we'll get you situated into your new home for the time being, then I'll show you around Konoha. Fu blinked a few seconds before nodding and following the blonde out. When the blonde and the others left, Tsunade turned to the only one left in the room. So how did he do? Kakashi snapped his book shut before speaking. He did extremely well. He was able to pick up what was happening long before we even got to Takigakure and created a plan of action that was not only sound, but also worked by utilizing the abilities of himself and his team. Tsunade nodded. Do you think he's ready for promotion to full Jonin? Kakashi gave a hum of thought before answering, yes, but I would have him take a few more missions before giving him Jonin status. Tsunade nodded. Thank you, you're dismissed. Kakashi nodded, pulling out his book and giving a perverse giggle as he disappeared in a puff of smoke. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX Fu sighed as she finished placing all of her clothing in one of the drawers. Looking around the room, she had to admit it was nice. Way nicer than my terrible apartment back home, she said to herself. The place reminded her of a few of the tales she had read about the rooms in a daimyo's palace. Finding that everything was put away, she nodded and to herself, moving over to the door as she made her way out. Walking down the hall, she was stopped as Naruto came out of his room. Hey, you got your stuff all put away? Asked Naruto. Fu nodded. Yes. Naruto noticed a small frown etched on the woman's face. Miss your home? Fu looked up at him before shaking her head. Not really, I was always hated there for what I held. Forced into a harsh training regimen in order to harness the Nanabi, sent on suicide missions afterwards, only to be treated like the plague upon return. Naruto nodded in understanding. The life of a Jinchuriki is never easy. Naruto paused for a moment as he decided to switch topics. How about I show you around and we can go out and get something to eat? Fu looked at him somewhat startled that he was being so nice to her, though he is also a Jinchuriki. Okay, she said out loud. Great. Naruto said as he pushed her down the stairs. Then there is only one place we can get food. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Oi. Oji-san, some miso ramen for me and my friend and keep him coming. Naruto shouted as he entered Ikiraku's and sat down at the stool reserved for him. Fu followed close behind, sitting down on his right. Chuki and Ayame turned around to find the two sitting down. The old man offered a grin. Well, Naruto. It's good to see you, and who is your friend? Another one of your. The old man held up a pinky and wiggled it conspiratorially. Fu felt a large blush spread across her face. Naruto just laughed as he waved a hand in the air. Nothing like that, Chuki Oji-san. She's staying here from Taki until all this red cloud business is taken care of. I offered her a place to stay until then. Chuki nodded, knowing better than to question Naruto about his missions. Alright then, your miso will be coming right up. Ayame walked over to the counter and plopped her head on the butt of her hands, leaning on the countertop as she looked at Naruto. So I take it you were on a mission. You were gone for quite a while, she said. Naruto nodded his head as he slurped up the noodles. Yeah, I had to go Taki and help defend the village from an enemy that was attacking it. Naruto kept his explanations vague. While he loved the ramen chef and daughter duo, he did not want them getting involved in anything Akatsuki related. Half an hour later, Naruto and Fu finished and the blonde paid for their meal before leaving. The two were walking along one of the streets when Naruto turned to Fu. Come on, I'll show you around the rest of Konoha, he said as he began to give her a more detailed tour of the village. XXXXXXXXXXXX. I see. Danzo said as he listened to Sai's report. If what his subordinate said was true and Naruto had been able to force Itachi into a retreat, then the boy was indeed powerful. However, there was another piece of information that intrigued him even more. So the Nanabi Jinchuriki is here. And wipe that stupid smile off your face. Yes, Danzo-sama, Sai replied with his head bowed in a submissive position. She is staying at the Namikaze estate under Namikaze-san's protection. Sai looked up with his smile still in place, and I was told that a smile is the best way to get into people's hearts. Danzo frowned in thought as he ignored the boy's words, for now, instead coming up with a plan for the new information he had received. If he could somehow get the Nanabi Jinchuriki under his control, then it would help solidify his position. However, the Namikaze would still be a problem. This is most interesting information, Danzo said, though it seemed as if he was talking more to himself. Danzo-sama, Sai said, getting the one-eyed mont's attention. I would like to request to stay with Namikaze-san as a member of his team. Danzo looked at the boy in shock for a second. Sai had never once requested anything and him doing it now made Danzo wonder what was going through the boy's mind. However, Danzo's arrogance in the belief that a shinobi he personally trained could never turn on him kept the man from assuming it was anything more than wanting to keep an eye on his target. Very well, I will allow it. Danzo had already planned on having Sai continue watching the boy so he could discover Naruto's weakness. I will want weekly reports on what Namikaze-san is doing and who he spends time with. Hi Danzo-sama. XXXXXXXXXXXX Omake. Penis or no? Penis. I don't see how someone who seems to be lacking a penis can fight an S-rank criminal, Sai replied with the fake smile he had been giving them since the start. Naruto glared at the boy. This kid had been nothing but trouble since they had met. Aside from the fact that the smile he gave was obviously fake and the boy had the emotional range of a toothpick, he also seemed to have some weird kind of dick fetish. He had mentioned Naruto's penis at least 6 different times when the blonde was speaking, most of which were an insinuation about Naruto having a lack of one. I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that, so that I don't end up killing you, Naruto said. He turned to look at Kakashi and was about to speak when Sai interrupted him. You know you shouldn't deny your dickless status. Sai gave the blonde shinobi a large smile. I read in a book once that the first step to getting over something is admitting you have a problem. Naruto eyebrow twitched as he ground his teeth together. Sai, if I hear one more word about dicks out of you I'm gonna. You can't do anything, Sai said. After all, when you're a dickless wonder like you are, there is nothing you can do. Best to just accept it and move on. That does it. Naruto growled as a familiar ball of swirling blue chakra formed in the palm of Naruto's left hand, before increasing its size to epic proportions. Naruto appeared in front of Sai in a yellow flash as he thrust the giant ball of energy in his hand. Cho Udoma Rasengan. XXXXXXXXXXXX Omake 2. Itachi's book. I see, was all Itachi said, preparing to fight against the Namikaze heir. However, before we begin I would like to discuss something with you, Naruto said in a serious tone. Itachi frowned as he wondered what the blonde wanted to talk to him about. What do you wish to discuss? Naruto grinned as he walked up to Itachi and pulled out a book. I wanted to thank you for writing this. This book is an absolute godsend. I can't tell you the number of times this baby kept me from being raped. Itachi took a look at the book, Fangirl 101. How to Identify and Avoid Fangirls by Itachi Uchiha. A rare smile graced Itachi's face. I am glad you can appreciate that book, it is one of my proudest accomplishments. I'll say, Naruto said, when Konoha gave you the title of genius they really meant it. This book is pure genius. Though I noticed you forgot to add something to it. Itachi looked at him in undisguised curiosity. Oh, what did I forget? He was sure he had gotten everything. Naruto shuddered. You forgot to add how to escape fanboys. Itachi felt a shiver crawl up his spine as he heard the words that made him pale, even worse than fangirls. That is a most problematic idea, Naruto-kun, Itachi said as he reached into his pouch and pulled out a box of Pocky. He grabbed a stick and put it in his mouth before offering one to Naruto. We should discuss how to rectify this problem over some Pocky, Itachi told the blonde, who had a curious look on his face. Naruto took a stick and put it in his mouth. This is some good stuff. Itachi nodded. You are quite lucky. I have never given any of my Pocky to anyone. Not even to your old family? Asked Naruto as he bit a piece off. Itachi gave him a deadpan look. Naruto-kun, why do you think the massacres even happened? Well, I just thought you went psychotic and killed them, the blonde commented sheepishly. No, that is not what happened at all, Itachi said. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX before the massacres, Konoha, Itachi-kun. Makoto said as she saw her eldest son sitting on the porch eating his Pocky. Seriously, Itachi-kun, can you eat something other than Pocky? Itachi froze before turning around. What did you say? His voice barely a whisper. I'm telling you, you need to eat something other than Pocky, Makoto said, it's not good for you. Itachi glared at his mother, the anger of her words turning his regular Sharingan eyes into the Mangekyo. Nobody tells me to stop eating Pocky. Before Makoto knew what was happening, Itachi began his rampage, killing off the entire clan in a single night, thus causing what would become known as the Uchiha Massacre. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto looked at Itachi as he related the true events of the Uchiha massacre. Dude, has anyone ever told you you're insane? Several have, yes, Itachi replied with a shrug. Now about that new book. Naruto nodded as he began to discuss several ideas with Itachi, neither noticing that Fu had woken up and was listening to the two in shock. And this is the person who beat me, Fu thought lamentingly.